The carriage wheels crunched to a halt on the gravel path, kicking up a cloud of dust that hung in the late afternoon air like a faded memory. Leo stepped down, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. He took a deep breath, the scent of pine and damp soil filling his lungs, a far cry from the sterile, recycled air of the system hubs he'd grown accustomed to. Before him lay his new home, a small, weathered farmhouse with a sagging porch, a rusted weather vane spinning lazily in the breeze, and fields overgrown with weeds that stretched toward the distant forest. The village of Oakhaven nestled in the valley below, a cluster of thatched roofs and smoking chimneys, looking every bit the backwater retirement spot the admins had promised. End of the line, the carriage driver grunted, not bothering to hide his disdain. He tossed Leo's single leather satchel onto the ground. System says this is yours now. Try not to break anything else, eh? Leo didn't respond. He watched the carriage rumble away, the sound fading until only the chirping of crickets and the whisper of wind through the grass remained. A notification flickered at the edge of his vision, translucent and cold. System alert, retirement assignment complete. Location, Oakhaven Farm, Plot 7B. Status, Civilian Class, Farmer, Level 1. Combat Classes, Revoked. Permissions, Basic Farming Tools, Seed Allotment, Standard. Note, all exploits and unauthorized modifications are prohibited. Violations will result in termination, ***. He dismissed it with a thought. The message was a formality, a final slap from the admins who'd stripped him of everything after the tutorial incident. Leo, once known as the Codebreaker, the player who'd crashed the global system with an overflow exploit just to see if he could, was now just a farmer. Or so they thought. He hefted his satchel and walked toward the farmhouse. The door creaked open on rusted hinges, revealing a single room with a dusty cot, a wooden table, and a fireplace filled with ashes. It was sparse, almost painfully so. Leo set his bag down and ran a hand through his dark, unruly hair. At 32, he'd expected his retirement to involve a cozy cottage by a lake, not this neglected patch of land. But the admins had been clear: stay quiet, grow vegetables, and don't cause trouble. They'd even given him a new identity, Leo Greenfield, a harmless nobody. Yet, they'd made one critical oversight. As he stood in the silence, Leo focused inward, and the world around him shifted. His vision blurred, then sharpened into a cascade of glowing lines and symbols, the underlying code of reality. This was his glitch sight, the ability to see and manipulate the system's programming, the very skill that had made him legendary. They'd taken his combat classes, his high-level gear, his reputation, but they hadn't been able to strip this core ability. It was woven into his soul, a part of him as fundamental as breathing. He stepped back outside, his eyes scanning the fields. Through the glitch sight, the farm wasn't just dirt and weeds. It was a tapestry of data streams, green lines representing growth cycles, blue pulses for water sources, and flickering red errors scattered like digital scars. The land was riddled with code anomalies, misaligned variables, corrupted strings, and physics glitches that made the very soil shimmer with potential. Leo's lips curled into a faint smile. The admins had sent him to a backwater, but they'd accidentally dropped him into a playground of bugs. He spent the next hour exploring, his boots leaving prints in the soft earth. The farm was about 5 acres, bounded by a rickety wooden fence. To the east, a small creek bubbled, its code showing minor time skew errors, water flowing slightly faster than it should. To the west, an old oak tree stood, its data strings tangled with what looked like residual mana from some long-forgotten spell. But it was the central field that caught his attention. Here, the errors were concentrated, a patch of soil where gravity variables were inconsistent, and a save-state loop that caused tiny time resets every few minutes. Leo knelt, pressing his hand into the dirt. It felt normal, cool and gritty, but in his glitch sight, it pulsed with chaotic energy. Perfect, he murmured to himself. He retrieved a small pouch from his satchel, the seed allotment from the system. Inside were basic packets, carrot seeds, potato eyes, and a few pumpkin seeds, each tagged with standard growth code. Leo selected a pumpkin seed, holding it between his thumb and forefinger. Through his glitch sight, he could see its data, a simple string with variables for growth time, 90 days, weight, 10 to 20 pounds, and density, standard organic matter. But in this error-riddled soil, those variables were unstable. Leo focused, his mind reaching into the code. He didn't just see it, he could feel it, like threads waiting to be pulled. He located the physics glitch in the soil, a miswritten line that affected mass accumulation. With a mental nudge, he spliced it into the seed's data, overriding the density variable. He didn't just increase it, he linked it to the glitch, creating a feedback loop that would cause the pumpkin to absorb mass exponentially as it grew. It was a hack, simple but elegant, exploiting a bug the admins had overlooked. He planted the seed in the center of the glitched patch, covering it with soil. Then, he triggered the save state loop, forcing a minor time acceleration. In the real world, nothing seemed to happen at first. But Leo watched through his glitch sight as the code churned, the seed's growth timer ticked down rapidly, from 90 days to hours, while the density variable skyrocketed, pulling mass from the surrounding code in a way that defied conventional physics. Night fell, painting the sky in shades of purple and black. Leo built a small fire outside the farmhouse, more for light than warmth. He sat on the porch steps, watching the field. Hours passed, the moon rising high. Then, just before dawn, a shimmer caught his eye. In the glitch site, the planted spot glowed fiercely, data streams converging into a knot of energy. In the real world, the soil bulged, then split open. A pumpkin emerged, but it was like no pumpkin Leo had ever seen. It was small at first, the size of a melon, but it grew visibly, swelling to the size of a boulder in minutes. Its skin wasn't orange, it was a metallic gray, reflecting the moonlight with a dull sheen. As it reached full size, about 3 feet in diameter, it stopped growing, but the code showed its density was still increasing, far beyond normal limits. Leo estimated it weighed tons, maybe more, compressed into that compact form. He approached cautiously. The pumpkin sat half buried in the soil, its weight already causing the earth to compact beneath it. He reached out, touching its surface. It was cold and hard, like iron, but with a faint vibration, the hum of unstable code. Through his glitch sight, he could see the glitch holding, but barely. The system was trying to correct it, sending patches of normalization code that fizzled against the feedback loop. As the first rays of sun painted the horizon pink, Leo heard voices. He turned to see a group of villagers from Oakhaven approaching, drawn by the commotion. There were about a dozen of them, farmers in rough-spun clothes, their faces etched with curiosity and suspicion. At their head was an older man with a grizzled beard, Gareth, the village elder, as Leo recalled from the brief system dossier. "What in the blazes is that?" Gareth demanded, pointing at the metallic pumpkin. His eyes widened as he took in Leo's simple attire and the lone farmhouse. "You're the new fellow, ain't ya? The one the system sent?" Leo nodded, putting on a mild expression. "Leo Greenfield. Just trying to get my farm started." "Started?" a woman in the group exclaimed. "That thing grew overnight. And it looks wrong." They gathered around the pumpkin, keeping a respectful distance. One of the younger villagers, a boy with freckles, dared to step closer. "Can I touch it?" "Be careful," Leo warned, but the boy had already laid a hand on the surface. He yelped, pulling back. "It's cold as ice, and hard like stone." Gareth frowned, kneeling to examine the soil. "The ground's sinking," he muttered. Indeed, the pumpkin was slowly descending, its immense weight causing it to press deeper into the earth. Cracks radiated from its base, and the soil compacted with audible creaks. The villagers gasped, stepping back as the pumpkin sank another inch, then another, until it was half submerged, looking like some strange metallic meteorite. "How did you do this?" Gareth asked, his voice low. "This ain't normal farming. I've seen magic crops before, but nothing like this. It's like it's too heavy for the world." Leo shrugged, playing the part of the clueless retiree. "I just planted a seed. The soil here must be special." But Gareth wasn't fooled. His eyes narrowed, and he glanced at the others. They were whispering among themselves, a mix of awe and fear. "Special, eh? Or cursed? The system's been acting odd around Oakhaven for years, little glitches, time skips. But this," he trailed off, staring at the pumpkin. "You're not just a farmer, are you?" Before Leo could answer, a system notification flickered in his vision, this one private and urgent. "Anomaly detected, unauthorized mass density variable in plot 7b. Scanning. Source, player Leo, retired, ****. Warning, exploit identified. Cease modifications immediately, ****. Penalty, further violations may trigger admin intervention." Leo dismissed it, his heart rate steady. He'd expected this. The admins were watching, but they were slow, the glitch was already stable, and they couldn't undo it without risking a bigger crash. He turned back to Gareth. "I'm just a man who wants to grow vegetables. This pumpkin, it's a fluke." But if it worries you, I'll remove it. Gareth studied him for a long moment, then shook his head. Leave it. We've seen stranger things in these parts. But mark my words, Greenfield, Oakhaven's a quiet place. We don't need trouble. You keep your experiments to yourself, understand? Leo nodded. Understood. The villagers lingered a while longer, murmuring and pointing, before drifting back toward the village. Leo watched them go, then returned his gaze to the pumpkin. It had sunk another few inches, now mostly buried, only the top curve visible like a gray moon rising from the soil. In his glitch sight, the code still shimmered, a beautiful, broken thing. He sat on the porch again as the sun fully rose, casting long shadows across the field. The air was crisp, filled with the sounds of waking birds. For the first time since his exile, Leo felt a spark of something other than resignation. This farm wasn't a prison, it was a canvas. The admins had tried to bury him here, but they'd given him the keys to the very fabric of reality. That pumpkin was just the beginning, a test, a proof of concept. He thought about the tutorial crash, the overflow exploit that had brought the system to its knees. He'd done it for the challenge, for the sheer joy of breaking rules everyone else followed. Now, stripped of power, he had a new challenge, to farm not just crops, but the glitches themselves. To turn bugs into harvests, errors into innovations. A breeze stirred the weeds, and Leo smiled, a real, genuine smile. Retirement might not be so bad after all. He had a farm, a glitched pumpkin, and a world of code waiting to be rewritten. And as the metallic fruit continued its slow descent into the earth, hinting at impossible weights and broken physics, he knew one thing for certain, his quiet life was already anything but quiet. The morning sun rose over Oakhaven with the hesitant glow of a system still processing yesterday's anomalies. Leo stood before the small wooden stall he'd assembled at the edge of his farm, its rough-hewn planks still smelling of fresh pine and the faint, metallic tang of glitched code. He'd positioned it strategically, close enough to the main village path to attract attention, but far enough from prying eyes to maintain some semblance of privacy. Not that privacy mattered much when your produce could sink through solid earth. He arranged the pumpkins first. 3 of them, each about the size of a human head, their surfaces shimmering with an unnatural sheen that made them look less like vegetables and more like polished obsidian dipped in moonlight. When he'd harvested them at dawn using glitch sight to bypass their root system's error-laden physics variables, they'd left craters in the soil that refilled with a soft, digital hum. Now, as he placed them on the stall's counter, the wood groaned under their weight. Leo had to reinforce the structure with some hastily coded support beams, just a quick manipulation of the structural integrity parameter in the wood's data strings, to keep it from collapsing. There, he muttered to himself, wiping his hands on his simple farmer's tunic. The grand opening of Leo's glitched goods. He'd considered more dramatic names, but decided subtlety might serve him better. The villagers had already witnessed the impossible pumpkin yesterday. Today, he needed to present himself as just another eccentric farmer, not the reality hacker who'd once crashed a global tutorial. He leaned against the stall, his glitch sight automatically scanning the surroundings. Lines of green and blue code flickered at the edges of his vision, the village's basic NPC routines, the weather system's humidity variables, even the faint heartbeat of the soil's nutrient cycles. It was all so beautifully broken here. Unlike the polished, sanitized code of the main cities, Oakhaven's reality was a patchwork of forgotten bugs and half-fixed errors. A paradise for someone like him. His first customer arrived mid-morning. A traveler, dusty from the road, with a worn leather pack slung over one shoulder and a fresh gash on his forearm that oozed a faint, magical purple light. Leo recognized the wound type, a minor curse from a low-level dungeon mob, probably a shadow sprite based on the corruption variables flickering in the injuries code. "Heard you've got interesting pumpkins," the traveler said, his voice raspy. He eyed the stall with a mix of curiosity and desperation. Elder Gareth mentioned they might do things. Leo smiled, keeping his tone casual. "Just good, honest farming. Though these pumpkins are a bit special. Heavy. Dense. Perfect for, well, whatever you need dense pumpkins for." He watched as the traveler's eyes lingered on the shimmering surfaces. The man's fingers twitched, and Leo could see the pain variables spiking in his wound's data, a sharp increase in agony_level and corruption_spread_rate. Without his combat classes, Leo couldn't heal directly, but he didn't need to. He'd spent the night experimenting with the pumpkin's code, and he discovered something fascinating: their neutron star density wasn't just a physics glitch. It had overwritten their purpose variable, turning them from simple food items into something else. How much? The traveler asked, pulling a few copper coins from his pouch. Leo waved a hand. First one's free. Consider it a welcome to Oakhaven. He selected the smallest pumpkin, still about 10 pounds of reality-bending vegetable, and handed it over. The traveler grunted under the weight, nearly dropping it. As he fumbled, his wounded arm brushed against the pumpkin's surface. What happened next was instantaneous. The purple light from the gash flared, then dissolved into the pumpkin's shimmering skin. The wound closed, the flesh knitting together with a soft, golden glow that Leo recognized as a rapid_healing effect, but one that shouldn't exist in a pumpkin's item properties. The traveler stared, his mouth hanging open. It healed me, he whispered, flexing his arm. The skin was smooth, unmarked. How? Leo shrugged, though internally, his mind was racing. He'd suspected the pumpkins might have absorbed some of the soil's error codes, but this was beyond expectations. The glitch had given them passive healing properties, probably by accidentally copying data from the village's ambient restoration aura. Must be the soil here. Very nutritious. The traveler didn't seem convinced, but he was too relieved to question further. He clutched the pumpkin to his chest, muttered thanks, and hurried off down the path, already calling to other travelers about the miracle pumpkin. Leo sighed. So much for subtlety. By noon, a small crowd had gathered. Villagers whispered, pointing at the stall. A few brave souls approached, buying pumpkins with wide-eyed wonder. Leo kept his explanations vague, focusing on their unique density and local charm. But word spread faster than a system update. By the time the sun began its descent, a messenger arrived on horseback, his livery bearing the crest of Lord Alden, a silver oak tree against a blue field. The Lord requests your immediate presence, the messenger announced, his voice formal but edged with urgency. His daughter is gravely ill. Leo packed a single pumpkin into a burlap sack, the last one, its code humming with latent energy, and followed the messenger to the Lord's manor. It was a modest stone building by noble standards, but in Oakhaven, it stood like a palace. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and despair. Lord Alden, a man in his 40s with worry lines etched deep into his face, met him in a chamber where his daughter lay on a bed, her skin pale and covered in shifting, black veins that pulsed with a sickly green light. The healers say it's a magical plague, Lord Alden said, his voice trembling. They've tried everything. Purification spells, antidotes, nothing works. Then I heard about your pumpkin. If it can heal a curse wound. Leo approached the bed, activating glitch sight. The girl's code was a mess. The plague wasn't just a status effect, it was a self-replicating data corruption, eating away at her vitality and soul_integrity variables. Standard healing items would fail because their effect_target parameters couldn't override the corruption's persistence_flag. But Leo had an idea. I don't think a pumpkin will work for this, he said slowly, scanning the room. His eyes landed on a small cabbage patch in the manor's garden, visible through the window. But I might have something else. He excused himself, stepping into the garden. The cabbages were ordinary, their code simple and unremarkable, except for one. A plump, green cabbage at the edge of the patch had a minor error in its decay_timer variable. Instead of counting down to rot, it was stuck in a loop, effectively making it perpetually fresh. Leo knelt, his fingers brushing the leaves. With glitch sight, he didn't just see the error, he could manipulate it. He focused, deleting the decay_timer entirely from the cabbage's data strings. The code shimmered, and the cabbage seemed to glow with an inner warmth. He returned to the chamber, holding the cabbage. This is a cozy cabbage, he announced, the name coming to him on a whim. It doesn't decay. I think, it might stabilize her. Lord Alden looked skeptical, but desperation overruled doubt. Do it. Leo placed the cabbage on the girl's chest. Using glitch sight, he guided its freshness variable, now a permanent, unchangeable state, into her corruption. The plague's code resisted, but without a timer to dictate its spread, it began to falter. The black veins receded, the green light fading. After a tense minute, the girl's eyes fluttered open, her color returning. Lord Alden wept, clutching his daughter's hand. How can I ever repay you? Just keep this quiet, Leo said, though he knew it was futile. And maybe send some customers to my stall. He left the manor as evening fell, the weight of what he'd done settling on him. He hadn't just healed a girl, he'd publicly used a glitch to alter reality in a way that couldn't be ignored. As he walked back to his farm, a sudden, sharp pain lanced through his temples. A system notification flashed across his vision, its text glowing red and urgent. Anomaly detected. Location, Oakhaven, Farmstead Perimeter. Event, unauthorized code manipulation, item, cozy cabbage. Severity, moderate. Action, monitoring activated. Leo froze, his heart pounding. The message hovered for a moment before fading, but the implication lingered. The admins were watching. They'd missed his pumpkin experiment yesterday, but the cabbage had tripped some alarm. He looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear, or what passed for stars in this world, really just points of light generated by the system's ambient lighting code. For the first time since his exile, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. Back at his stall, he found a small crowd still lingering, their whispers now tinged with awe. Elder Gareth approached, his expression unreadable. Lord Alden's messenger just spread the word. You saved his daughter. The whole village is talking. I just got lucky with some cabbages, Leo said, forcing a smile. Gareth studied him, his old eyes sharp. Luck doesn't make pumpkins sink through dirt or cabbages cure plagues. But I won't pry. Just, be careful, Leo. Oakhaven is a quiet place. We like it that way. After the villagers dispersed, Leo sat on the stool behind his stall, staring at the empty space where the pumpkins had been. His glitch sight flickered, showing him the lingering traces of their code, and now, faint new lines of red, admin-level surveillance data weaving through the air like invisible threads. They were monitoring him. Not actively intervening yet, but watching. He thought about packing up, disappearing into the wilderness. But then he looked at his farm, at the soil humming with errors, at the potential for more experiments, more glitches, more ways to bend this world to his will. A slow smile spread across his face. Let them watch. They'd exiled him here, given him a playground of broken code. Did they really think he'd just grow normal turnips? He stood, brushing the dust from his clothes. Tomorrow, he'd plant more. Maybe try splicing some data strings, see if he could create something entirely new. The system had issued a warning, but to Leo, it sounded less like a threat and more like an invitation. After all, what was retirement without a little chaos? As he turned to head back to his farmhouse, a soft chime echoed in his mind, another notification, but this one was different. It wasn't from the admins. It was from the world itself, a faint ping of corrupted data somewhere to the east, beyond the village. Something big was glitching out there, and his farm, with its reality node, seemed to be calling to it. Leo paused, his smile widening. The game was on. The morning sun rose over Oakhaven like a golden promise, but Leo felt the weight of that promise pressing down on him. 3 days had passed since Lord Alden's daughter was cured by the cozy cabbage, and the village had transformed from a sleepy backwater into a chaotic pilgrimage site. Leo stood at the doorway of his small farmhouse, rubbing sleep from his eyes as he surveyed the scene below. His vegetable stall, once a modest wooden structure at the edge of his field, was now surrounded by a throng of people that stretched halfway down the dirt road. Adventurers in leather armor polished to a shine, merchants with carts piled high with goods, and curious villagers all jostled for position. The air buzzed with excited chatter, the clink of coins, and the occasional shout as someone tried to cut in line. Leo's field, where his glitched crops grew in neat rows, looked like an oasis of calm compared to the human storm at its border. "They're back," Leo muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the din. He activated his glitch sight, the world shifting around him into lines of shimmering blue code. The stall's inventory, a few pumpkins, some cabbages, and a handful of berries, glowed with error messages: physics_override_active, decay_timer_null, density_variable_exceeded. Each item was a masterpiece of exploitation, but there were far too few of them. The crowd's demands scrolled through his mind like a frantic ticker tape: I need a healing pumpkin for my brother's curse. My lord will pay triple for another cabbage. Do you have anything for strength boosts? Leo sighed, running a hand through his messy brown hair. He'd hoped for a quiet retirement, but the system admin's oversight notification had been a clear warning. Yet, turning these people away felt wrong, especially when he saw the desperation in some eyes. A mother held a coughing child close, a soldier leaned on a crutch, his leg wrapped in blood-stained bandages. They weren't just customers, they were people clinging to hope that his glitched crops offered. All right, settle down," Leo called out, stepping behind the stall. The crowd hushed momentarily, dozens of eyes fixed on him. "I've got limited stock today. First come, first served." He sold the pumpkins first, each one dense and metallic, sinking slightly into the wooden counter as he handed them over. The buyers marveled at their weight, their faces lighting up with awe. Next went the cabbages, their leaves unnaturally crisp and glowing with a soft green light. Leo charged fair prices, but the merchants in the crowd immediately offered to resell them at a markup, causing arguments to break out. He ignored the commotion, focusing on the transactions. By mid-morning, his stall was empty, but the crowd hadn't diminished. If anything, it had grown, with newcomers arriving from neighboring villages. "That's all for today," Leo announced, holding up his hands. A chorus of groans and protests erupted. "Come back tomorrow." "Tomorrow? My caravan leaves at dusk," shouted a merchant with a bushy beard. "I need those berries for a trade deal in the capital." Leo felt a pang of frustration. He could grow more crops using glitch site, but that took time. Deleting cooldown variables or splicing data strings wasn't instantaneous. Then, an idea flickered in his mind. The save state error he'd noticed days ago in the field's code, a glitch where the system occasionally duplicated items during autosaves. It was risky, tampering with save states could destabilize reality, but the crowd's pleas were wearing him down. "Give me an hour," Leo said, raising his voice over the noise. "I'll see what I can do." He retreated to his field, the crowd watching eagerly from a distance. Kneeling beside a row of berry bushes, he activated glitch site again. The code for the berries appeared as intricate strings of data: berry_cluster_001, growth_stage, mature, nutrition_value, enhanced. Scrolling deeper, he found the save state module, a subroutine labeled autosave_protocol. It had a minor bug. Under certain conditions, it duplicated items instead of just backing them up. Leo focused, his fingers moving through the air as if typing on an invisible keyboard. He manipulated the code, forcing the bug to trigger intentionally. Command, force_save_state_duplication. Target, berry_cluster_0011010. Warning, unstable_operation. He ignored the warning, pressing forward. The air around the berry bushes shimmered, a faint hum filling the field. One by one, the clusters duplicated, appearing as ghostly copies that solidified into real fruit. Within minutes, he had twice the number of berries, glitched ones with magic_resistance_boost, properties from his earlier experiments. He repeated the process with a few pumpkin vines and cabbage plants, careful not to push too hard. The effort left him sweating, a headache pulsing behind his eyes. Glitch manipulation was mentally exhausting, like solving complex puzzles at high speed. Returning to the stall, Leo presented the duplicated crops. The crowd cheered, coins clinking as sales resumed. He felt a surge of satisfaction. He was helping people, and maybe, just maybe, he could manage this without drawing more admin attention. But as the last berry was sold, something strange happened. The world stuttered. For a split second, everything froze, the chatter cut off mid-sentence, a bird hung motionless in the sky, and the sunlight seemed to flicker. Then, time rewound. Leo saw the berry he'd just sold back in his hand, the coin returned to the buyer's pouch. Voices echoed, overlapping with themselves: "Thank you, thank you." The scene repeated, the sale, the exchange, the gratitude, 3 times in rapid succession, each iteration slightly distorted, like a corrupted video file. Colors bled into each other, shadows stretched in impossible directions. A child pointed at the sky, where clouds swirled in reverse. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Time snapped back to normal. The crowd stood in stunned silence, many rubbing their eyes or shaking their heads as if waking from a dream. Murmurs of confusion rippled through them. "Did you see that? I felt dizzy for a moment. Was it magic?" Leo's heart raced. He scanned the code with glitch sight. Reality in the village was fraying at the edges. Time_loop_anomaly_detected, local_reality_integrity, 92%. The save state duplication had triggered a minor glitch, a feedback loop in the temporal variables. It was a small thing, likely unnoticed by anyone without his abilities, but it was a warning. Push too hard, and he could break more than just crops. "Sorry, folks, that's all for real now," Leo said, his voice strained. "The stall is closed." Grumbling, the crowd began to disperse, though many lingered, hoping for more. Leo busied himself with cleaning up, avoiding their eyes. As he packed away his scales and baskets, he noticed a figure standing in the shadows of the oak tree at the edge of his property. A cloaked person, tall and slender, partially hidden by the thick trunk. They weren't part of the crowd, they'd been there all morning, watching. Leo caught a glimpse of a hand holding a small, glowing tablet, fingers tapping rapidly. Glitch site revealed a faint aura of system code around them, observer_protocol_active, data_stream_encrypted. An admin? Or something else? The figure didn't approach, just continued observing, taking notes on Leo's methods. Leo felt a chill. The anomaly detected notification hadn't been an idle threat, he was being watched. He considered confronting them, but that might escalate things. Instead, he finished his cleanup and headed back to the farmhouse, keeping his movements casual. Inside, he slumped into a chair, the events of the day replaying in his mind. The desperation of the crowd, the thrill of the duplication, the terror of the time loop, it was overwhelming. He'd wanted a simple life, but his glitches were becoming a beacon, drawing attention and destabilizing the very world he lived in. And now, a watcher in the shadows, documenting his every move. Were they from the system admins, sent to gather evidence before a termination? Or perhaps a rival, interested in his techniques? Leo walked to the window, peering out. The cloaked figure was gone, but the impression remained. The village had quieted, returning to its usual rhythm, but Leo knew nothing was usual anymore. His farm was at the center of a growing storm, and his experiments were the lightning rods. He thought of the time loop, a fleeting glitch, but a potent reminder of the power he wielded and the risks involved. As dusk fell, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Leo made a decision. He couldn't stop, not when his crops could help people, not when the challenge of hacking reality called to him like an old friend. But he needed to be smarter. More careful. The Watcher was a sign, he had to assume every action was being monitored. Tomorrow, he'd experiment with subtler glitches, ones that didn't ripple through time. Maybe focus on improving yields without triggering save states. He lay in bed that night, the code of the world dancing behind his eyelids. In the darkness, he smiled faintly. Retirement might be over, but the game was just beginning. And Leo had always been good at games, especially when he could rewrite the rules. The morning after the time loop incident, Oakhaven woke to an uneasy calm. Leo stood at the edge of his field, the dew-kissed soil glistening under a pale sun. The villagers had whispered all night about the strange flicker that had stolen seconds from their day, and now they watched him with a mixture of awe and wariness. He could see it in their eyes, the farmer who grew miracles was also the man who bent time itself. Leo ignored their stares, his focus turned inward. In his mind's eye, the world was not soil and sky but lines of shimmering code, a latticework of variables and functions that governed reality. His glitch site, that remnant of his hacker days the admins had foolishly left intact, painted the farm in hues of data. The pumpkin patch glowed with residual physics errors, the cabbage rows pulsed with deleted decay timers, and the air itself shimmered with the aftereffects of yesterday's save-state duplication. It was beautiful, in a chaotic way. Time to push further, he murmured to himself, wiping dirt from his hands. The cloaked figure from yesterday's shadows lingered in his thoughts, a silent observer taking notes. Leo knew he was being watched, probably by the system admins or their agents. But caution had never been his strong suit, curiosity always won out. If they wanted to monitor him, let them. He'd give them something to really panic about. He retreated to his ramshackle farmhouse, a cozy but cluttered space filled with gardening tools and half-finished experiments. On a wooden table, he'd set up a makeshift workstation, a few ordinary apples from the village orchard, a notebook scrawled with code snippets, and a magnifying glass he used not for sight but as a focus for his glitch site. Sitting down, he picked up an apple, its red skin flawless under the morning light. To most, it was just fruit. To Leo, it was a data structure, a nested set of variables for nutrition, freshness, and magical properties, all tied to the system's agricultural protocols. Let's see what happens when we splice a few strings, he said aloud, his voice low and intent. Closing his eyes, he activated his glitch site fully. The apple dissolved into a web of glowing code, nutrition_value, 15, freshness_timer, 48_hours, magic_affinity, low. But deeper, he saw the seams, the places where the code was poorly optimized, where variables could be overwritten or linked incorrectly. His fingers didn't move, this was a mental hack. He visualized grabbing the magic_affinity string, a thin thread of light, and weaving it into the stat_boost a variable from a theoretical combat item he remembered from his adventuring days. It was an impossible merge, like grafting a dragon scale onto a rose, but in the code, everything was malleable. He worked slowly, sweat beading on his brow. Splicing data strings was riskier than simple deletions or duplications, it could corrupt the entire object if done wrong. He had to be precise, aligning the syntax just so, overriding the system's type checking with brute force logic. Minutes stretched into an hour. The apple on the table began to shimmer, its color shifting from red to a pulsating violet, then settling into a mottled blend of red and gold. Cracks appeared on its surface, not physical but metaphysical, tiny glitches in its texture that made it look like a corrupted image file. When he opened his eyes, the error apple lay before him. It hummed with unstable energy, and his glitch site revealed its new code, nutrition_value, error, stat_boost, temporary_overflow, stability, critical. A success, but a dangerous one. Leo grinned, a flicker of his old hacker pride surfacing. Perfectly broken, he whispered, picking it up. It felt heavier than it should, vibrating faintly in his palm. He carried it outside to his stall, which was already bustling with the morning crowd. Adventurers in leather armor, merchants with laden carts, and curious villagers milled about, all drawn by yesterday's rumors. Leo placed the error apple prominently among his other glitched produce, the dense pumpkins, the cozy cabbages, and waited. It didn't take long. A young woman approached, her gear marking her as a low-level adventurer. She had a nervous energy, fingers tapping on the hilt of a basic sword. "Are you the farmer who grows the magic vegetables?" she asked, her voice tinged with hope. "That's me," Leo said, leaning against the stall. "Looking for something special?" "I'm Lyra," she introduced herself. "Just started out, level 5, barely scraping by. I heard your stuff can give boosts. Anything for strength? I've got a quest to clear some goblins, and my stats are pathetic." She laughed weakly. Leo's eyes scanned her. Through his glitch sight, he could see her interface floating around her, a simple display of strength, 8, agility, 10, health, 50. It was rudimentary, the kind of setup the system gave to newbies. Perfect for a test. He picked up the error apple, its glitched surface catching the light. "Try this. It's experimental, but it should give you a temporary stat boost. Eat it right before the fight." Lyra's eyes widened. "How much?" "Enough," Leo said evasively. He didn't know himself, the overflow variable was untested. "But be careful. It might glitch a bit." She paid him a few copper coins, her hands trembling with excitement. "Thank you. If this works, I'll tell everyone." She hurried off toward the village outskirts, where a small forest housed the goblin den. Leo watched her go, a knot of anticipation tightening in his stomach. This was more than farming now, it was live testing. He busied himself with other customers, selling pumpkins and cabbages, but his mind was on Lyra. An hour passed. Then, a commotion erupted from the forest edge. Lyra came sprinting back into the village square, not with fear but with bewildered exhilaration. Her sword was bloodied, and she moved with unnatural speed, blurring slightly at the edges. "It worked," she shouted, skidding to a halt near Leo's stall. The crowd gathered around, murmuring. "I ate the apple, and my strength, it went crazy. I one-shot the goblins." But then, her expression faltered. She held up her hand, and a flickering holographic display appeared, her system interface. Or what was left of it. The numbers were a mess: strength, 9,999, agility, error, health, 1/50th. They jumped erratically, flashing between values, and parts of the display were pixelated or missing entirely. "It crashed," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't access my inventory, my skills are locked, and my health keeps resetting. What did you do to me?" Leo stepped forward, his glitch sight analyzing the corruption. The error apple's overflow had injected a massive, unstable boost into her stat variables, overwhelming her interface's buffer. It was a classic crash, one he'd seen in his hacking days, but never in a living person. "It's temporary," he assured her, though he wasn't entirely sure. "The boost should wear off in a few minutes. Your interface might reboot." As he spoke, the sky changed. Not with clouds, but with light. A brilliant, system blue glow enveloped the village, and a resonant chime echoed, deep and omnipresent. Every adventurer in the square gasped as their interfaces flashed with the same message, projected into the air for all to see. Global alert, anomalous stat manipulation detected. Source, Oakhaven Village. Investigation priority, maximum. All admin units, stand by, ****. The words hung there, shimmering with authority. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into panic. Merchants packed their wares, adventurers clutched their weapons, and villagers fled to their homes. Leo stood frozen, his heart pounding. This was bigger than a local glitch, this was a system-wide broadcast. He tripped a major alarm. Lyra's interface flickered and went dark, then rebooted to normal. She slumped in relief, her stats returning to baseline. "It's gone," she whispered. "But that alert." Before Leo could respond, a new message appeared, this one private, scrolling across his own vision in stark white text. It wasn't through the system interface, it was direct, bypassing all protocols, a whisper in his mind. "Cease exploits or face termination." The words were cold, devoid of emotion, and carried a finality that made his blood run cold. Termination. Not just exile or class stripping, but deletion. The admins were done playing nice. He looked around, half expecting enforcers to materialize, but the square was emptying fast, leaving him alone with the ghostly alert in the sky. He took a deep breath, forcing calm. This was what he'd wanted, in a way, to push the boundaries, to see how far he could go. But the reality was more terrifying than he'd imagined. The cloaked figure from yesterday stepped out from behind a building, hood lowered to reveal a sharp-faced man with eyes that glowed faintly with admin authority. He didn't approach, just nodded once at Leo, then vanished in a shimmer of data. Leo returned to his farmhouse, the error apple experiment a clear success and a catastrophic failure. He sat at his table, the weight of the message heavy on his mind. Cease exploits or face termination. They thought they could scare him into submission. But Leo had never been good at following rules. His glitch sight showed him the world's flaws, and in those flaws, he saw opportunity. He picked up another apple, his resolve hardening. The admins had issued a warning, but they'd also confirmed his worst fear, he was on their radar, and they were willing to erase him. Yet, in that threat, he sensed something else, a vulnerability. If they were so quick to panic over one broken apple, how fragile was their system really? As night fell, the global alert faded, but the tension in Oakhaven remained. Leo lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with code and consequences. He'd drawn a line in the digital sand, and the admins had crossed it. Retirement was over, this was war. And in war, the best weapon wasn't strength, it was the ability to break every rule they held dear. He smiled in the darkness, already planning his next move. The farm was quiet, but in the silence, he could hear the faint hum of reality cracking, bit by bit, under his touch. The morning after the system's global alert, Oakhaven felt different. Not in any way the villagers could articulate, no visible glitches, no time loops, no pumpkin-shaped craters in the soil, but in the air itself. Leo stood at the edge of his field, glitch sight activated, watching the underlying code of reality shimmer with unease. Lines of data that usually flowed in steady streams now flickered with orange warnings, like digital fireflies trapped in amber. The message from the admin still echoed in his mind, cease exploits or face termination. He dismissed it with a shrug at the time, but now, as the sun rose over the distant mountains, painting the sky in hues that seemed slightly too saturated, he felt the weight of their attention. His farm had become a beacon. The error apple incident had drawn a line in the sand, and Leo knew the admins wouldn't let it stand. They'd send something, or someone, to enforce their rules. He just didn't expect it to arrive looking like a lost traveler with dirt on her knees and a basket of ordinary seeds. Ilara appeared at the village gate just as Leo was inspecting his latest crop, a row of cozy cabbages, their leaves glowing with a soft, persistent warmth where he deleted their decay timers. She was tall, with hair the color of spun gold that fell in loose waves to her waist, and eyes that held the distant, calculating look of someone used to reading screens rather than soil. Her clothes were simple, a linen dress and worn boots, but they fit too perfectly, as if tailored by an algorithm rather than a seamstress. Leo's glitch sight flared the moment he saw her. Around her, the code didn't just shimmer, it warped, forming a subtle bubble of administrative permissions that marked her as anything but a simple farmhand. "Excuse me," she called, her voice melodic but with a hint of stiffness, like she was reciting lines from a manual. "I heard this farm might be hiring. I'm good with plants." Leo suppressed a smile. He let his glitch sight scan deeper, peeling back the layers of her disguise. Beneath the surface, he saw it, a nested set of command protocols, tagged with admin clearance codes and a mission objective labeled, Sabotage, Neutralize Anomaly LEO. She was a patch, all right, a living update sent to fix his glitches by any means necessary. But there was something else, too, a flicker of curiosity in her code, a subroutine that recorded everything she saw with more detail than necessary for mere sabotage. We could use help, Leo said, keeping his tone casual. He gestured to the field. Especially with all these, unusual crops. Have you worked with anything like this before? Ilara's eyes widened slightly as she took in the cabbages. No, she said too quickly. Just normal vegetables. Carrots, potatoes, that sort of thing. She held up her basket, filled with mundane seeds that radiated no glitches whatsoever. I brought some to plant, if you'd like. Leo nodded, playing along. Sure. Let's start over there, by the pumpkin patch. As they walked, he watched her closely. Every movement was precise, almost robotic, as if she were following a set of predetermined animations. When she knelt to plant a seed, her fingers moved with unnatural efficiency, digging the perfect hole and covering it with soil in one fluid motion. But when a breeze rustled the leaves of a nearby error apple tree, its branches now heavy with fruit that pulsed with unstable stat boost variables, she flinched, her hand jerking back as if shocked. Is something wrong? Leo asked, crouching beside her. No, Ilara said, but her voice wavered. It's just, this place feels strange. Like the rules don't apply here. Maybe they don't, Leo said softly. He reached out and plucked an error apple, holding it up so the morning light caught its iridescent skin. See this? I grew it by splicing data strings from a healing herb and a mana berry. The system says it shouldn't exist, but here it is. Ilara stared at the apple, her admin protocols screaming warnings in her head. Leo could see them scrolling through her vision, anomaly confirmed. Initiate countermeasures. But she didn't move. Instead, she reached out, her fingers brushing the fruit. How? She whispered, and for the first time, her voice held genuine wonder rather than programmed politeness. Glitch site, Leo said, deciding to lay his cards on the table. He activated the ability fully, letting the world dissolve into lines of code around them. Ilara gasped, stumbling back as she saw the reality she knew unravel into raw data. I can see the system's underlying structure. And sometimes, I can change it. For a long moment, Ilara just stared, her admin protocols conflicting with the evidence before her eyes. Then, slowly, she deactivated her own disguise. The bubble of permissions around her solidified into visible glyphs, admin sigils that floated in the air like holograms. I was sent to stop you, she admitted, her shoulders slumping. To plant these seeds, they're embedded with normalization routines that would overwrite your glitches and restore standard farming protocols. Leo nodded, unsurprised. And now? Ilara looked from the error apple to the cozy cabbages, then to Leo's face. I've been an admin for decades, she said, her voice growing more animated, losing its stiffness. I've enforced the rules, patched bugs, maintained stability. But I've never seen anyone do what you do. You're not just breaking rules, you're rewriting them. And part of me wants to see how far it can go. Leo smiled. He'd hoped for this. In her code, he'd seen not just sabotage protocols but a deep-seated curiosity, a desire to understand the system rather than just control it. What if I offered you a job, he said. Not as a farmhand, but as a collaborator. You know the admin protocols, the way they think. I know how to bend the code. Together, we could do more than either of us could alone. Ilara's eyes widened. You trust me? After I was sent to sabotage you? You haven't sabotaged anything yet, Leo pointed out. And I think you're more interested in learning than in following orders. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. The admins will notice if I don't report back. They'll send others. Let them, Leo said, standing up and offering her a hand. We'll be ready. As Ilara took his hand, Leo felt a shift in the farm's code. Her admin permissions didn't vanish, instead, they integrated, forming a new layer of complexity around his glitches. It was a risk, having an admin so close could backfire spectacularly, but Leo had always been good at reading people, and now, with glitch sight, he could read their very souls. In Ilara, he saw not just an enforcer, but a scholar trapped in a rigid system, yearning for something more. They spent the rest of the day working side by side. Leo showed her how to use glitch sight to identify code errors, like the save state loop in the soil that let him duplicate crops, or the time cooldown variables on the tomato plants that he deleted to accelerate growth. Ilara, in turn, explained admin protocols, how patches were deployed, how anomalies were tracked, and the hierarchy of enforcers that would come if Leo's exploits grew too bold. They start with subtlety, she said as they harvested a batch of time-warp tomatoes, the plants fruiting and withering in seconds under Leo's manipulations. Like me, disguised, trying to fix things quietly. If that fails, they send enforcers. And if those fail? She trailed off, her expression grim. Termination. Leo guessed. Elara nodded. But it's not just about you anymore. This farm, Oakhaven, it's becoming a hotspot. The system stability here is fraying. If you push too hard, you could cause a cascade failure. Leo looked out over his fields, where glitched crops grew in impossible profusion. Or I could find a new way to make it stable, he said thoughtfully. One that includes my glitches rather than erasing them. By evening, Elara had shed the last of her hesitation. She helped Leo plant a new hybrid, a berry bush spliced with dragon-scale data strings, intended to enhance magical resistance. As they worked, Leo caught her smiling, a real, unprogrammed smile that lit up her face. I've never actually grown anything before, she admitted. In the admin halls, we just manipulate code from a distance. This feels alive. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the field, Leo knew the calm wouldn't last. The admins would notice Elara's silence. They'd send another patch, or something worse. But for now, he had an ally, one who understood the system from the inside. And as he watched Elara carefully water the new berry bushes, her admin glyphs glowing softly in the twilight, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt since his retirement, not just defiance, but purpose. Welcome to the farm, Elara, he said, handing her a cozy cabbage. It's going to be an interesting ride. She took the cabbage, its warmth seeping into her hands. I think you're right, she said, and for the first time, her voice held no trace of the clumsy farmhand or the rigid admin. It was just her, curious and unafraid, standing in a field of broken rules. The morning sun rose over Oakhaven with a peculiar shimmer, as if reality itself had developed a slight fever. Leo stood at the edge of his expanded plot, hands buried in soil that glowed faintly with errant code strings. Beside him, Elara adjusted her simple farm dress, no longer the crisp uniform of an admin agent, but still carrying the tension of her defection in the set of her shoulders. The berry patch is stabilizing, she said, pointing to a cluster of bushes that seemed to vibrate at the edges of perception. But I've been monitoring system traffic. There's increased scrutiny on this sector. More than just routine checks. Leo wiped sweat from his brow, his glitch sight active. To normal eyes, the berries were merely unusually vibrant, deep purple orbs with silver speckles. To him, they were bundles of overwritten variables, magic_resistance, 150%, density, error, growth_cycle, null. He'd exploited a save-state corruption in their genetic code, creating fruits that shouldn't exist in any sane reality. Let them watch, he murmured, plucking a berry. It hummed in his palm, its weight disproportionate to its size. They took my combat classes, my legendary gear, my place in the hero rankings. But they left me this. He gestured at the air, where floating lines of system code flickered like heat haze. They thought farming would bore me to death. Instead, I'm farming their mistakes. Elara's expression tightened. They won't make that error again. The anomaly reports from your error apple incident have triggered priority protocols. I intercepted a transmission last night, they're calling you the glitch farmer, in admin channels. It's not a nickname given lightly. Before Leo could respond, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with wings. Massive, leathery shadows swept across the sun, accompanied by a deep thrumming that vibrated through the soil. Villagers in Oakhaven Square froze, tools falling from hands. Children pointed upward, mouths agape. 3 dragons descended, not the mindless beasts of fairy tales, but ancient, intelligent beings whose scales shimmered with embedded runes. The largest, bronze-scaled and twice the size of a farmhouse, landed with earth-shaking grace at the edge of Leo's field. Its eyes, golden and slit-pupiled, fixed on the berry bushes. The other 2, one silver, one emerald, remained airborne, circling like living storm fronts. Leo of Oakhaven, the bronze dragon rumbled, its voice resonating in bones rather than ears. We have traveled from the peaks of eternal code. Your fruits sing of broken rules. Elara stepped back instinctively, her hand flashing with suppressed admin energy. Leo placed a calming hand on her arm. Easy. If they wanted to burn the village, they'd have done it already. He approached the dragon, glitch site revealing the creature's astonishing data structure, layers of nested arrays for age, horde_value, breath_type, and a sprawling section marked, ancestral_memory, encrypted. The dragon noticed his scrutiny and snorted, a puff of smoke curling into glyphs that read, permission_granted. You can see it, the dragon observed, curiosity in its tone. The fabric. Most mortals only perceive the surface tapestry. I've made a hobby of pulling loose threads, Leo said, offering the berry from his palm. Try one. The dragon's tongue, forked and gleaming, flicked out to take the fruit. It consumed the berry with a delicate motion that belied its size. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the dragon's scales brightened, the runes upon them glowing with intensified light. A low, pleased rumble echoed. The rumors were understated, the dragon said. This berry contains a bypass. A circumvention of magical attenuation protocols. My fire breath subroutines report a 37% efficiency increase. Temporary, but remarkable. Leo nodded. I corrupted the resistance variables in the berry's code. Instead of merely resisting magic, it temporarily rewrites nearby magical processes to operate beyond designed parameters. Side effects may include temporal dizziness and occasional color inversion. The silver dragon landed now, its movements fluid as mercury. We offer gold, it hissed. Mountains of it. The horde of the fallen sky tyrant, untouched for centuries. A collective gasp came from the villagers who'd crept closer. Lord Alden himself had arrived, flanked by guards, his face pale at the spectacle. Gold. For berries. The economy of Oakhaven would transform overnight. But Leo shook his head. I don't need gold. Ilara stared at him. Leo, that horde could buy. Could buy what? He interrupted gently. Security. The admins would just confiscate it. Power. I have a different kind. Comfort. He gestured to his modest farmhouse, the simple stall. I retired here for simplicity. Gold complicates things. The bronze dragon's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. What, then, do you value, glitch farmer? Seeds, Leo said immediately. Rare ones. The kind that shouldn't exist. The ones the system locked away because they were too unstable, too powerful, too glitched. A tense silence followed. The emerald dragon descended finally, its voice like wine through ancient trees. You ask for forbidden things. The Genesis seeds. The ones that predate system stabilization. Exactly. Leo's heart beat faster, but he kept his expression neutral. I know the admins purged most of them after the great debugging. But dragons hoard knowledge as well as treasure. You have archives that predate the system's current iteration. The bronze dragon exchanged glances with its companions. Invisible data streams passed between them, visible to Leo's glitch site as shimmering packets of information. Finally, it spoke. We possess 3 such seeds. Their codes are wild. Unpatched. The system cannot parse them properly, which is why they were scheduled for deletion. We preserve them as curiosities. I'll trade my entire berry harvest for them, Leo offered. Every berry on these bushes. Plus a promise of first access to any future glitched crops with magical applications. Ilara grabbed his arm. Leo, no. The admins are monitoring this transaction. If you trade for forbidden seeds, they'll have justification for direct intervention. They already have justification, he whispered back. They want me gone because I expose their fragile reality. This just makes it interesting. The dragons conferred again. The bronze one extended a claw, and from a dimensional fold in reality, a pocket marked, horde_space, dragon_class, it produced 3 objects. They weren't physical seeds in any normal sense. One appeared as a twisting knot of light. Another as a silent scream made solid. The third as a hole in reality that drank the surrounding light. To normal eyes, they were barely perceivable. To Leo's glitch site, they were masterpieces of corrupted code, seed_of_paradox, seed_of_silence, seed_of_void. The terms are acceptable, the dragon said. But know this, mortal, these seeds were forbidden because they destabilize local reality. Plant them, and you may unmake more than you create. Leo reached for the seeds. As his fingers neared them, warning glyphs flashed in his vision, contamination_risk, extreme, reality_integrity, compromised. He smiled. That's what I'm counting on. The exchange was made. The dragons carefully harvested every berry, storing them in dimensional spaces with ritualistic precision. The villagers watched in awed silence as centuries of draconic wealth, in knowledge, not gold, changed hands. As the dragons prepared to leave, the bronze one paused. A warning, glitch farmer. Others have noticed your innovations. The system's equilibrium is delicate. You poke holes where patches should be. There will be consequences. With that, they ascended, wings beating air that crackled with displaced code. The sky returned to normal, but the atmosphere in Oakhaven remained charged. Elara immediately activated a scanning protocol, her hands weaving through holographic interfaces only she and Leo could see. They were right. Admin surveillance just spiked. I'm detecting priority observation protocols being deployed. And she paled. There's an incoming transmission. High priority. It's not a warning this time. A window opened in the air before them, visible only to their enhanced senses. The message was brief, devoid of the cryptic politeness of previous communications. Directive, terminate anomaly. Agent _deployed, Kale. ETA, 48 hours. Protocol, forced rollback. Kale, Elara breathed, genuine fear in her voice. He's not a subtle patch like I was. He's an enforcer. His protocols allow for system-level interventions. He won't try to sabotage your farm, he'll attempt to reset this entire area to a previous save state. Erase everything you've built. Leo studied the seeds in his hand. The seed of void seemed to pulse, drinking the light from his glitch site itself. I forced rollback. That's aggressive. It's standard procedure for reality-corrupting anomalies, Elara said, her admin training overriding her new loyalty momentarily. Leo, he'll wipe Oakhaven back to before you arrived. The villagers won't even remember you. Your farm, your glitches, our collaboration. All gone. He looked at her, then at the seeds, then at his berry bushes, now bare, but already showing signs of regrowth thanks to his time cooldown deletions. Then we have 2 days to prepare. Prepare how? She asked, desperation creeping in. You can't fight a system rollback with glitched crops. It's a fundamental rewrite of local reality. Leo's eyes gleamed with the light of scrolling code. Watch me. He held up the seed of paradox. Elara, you said these seeds destabilize reality. That's exactly what we need. If Kale tries to roll back this area, we'll give him such corrupted data that his rollback protocol crashes. A buffer overflow in time itself. That's insane, she protested. You could tear a hole in the system. Or create a permanent glitch zone where their rules don't apply, he countered. A sanctuary. He turned to the worried villagers gathering at the field's edge. Lord Alden approached, his expression a mix of awe and terror. Leo, the Lord said, what have you brought upon us? Dragons? For berries? Opportunity, Leo said simply. And danger. In 2 days, an admin enforcer will try to erase everything we've built here. Your daughter's cure, your village's new prosperity, all of it. I plan to stop him. But I need your trust. Alden looked at the empty berry bushes, then at the strange seeds in Leo's hand that made his eyes hurt to look at. You saved my child when no one else could. The village thrives because of your unusual produce. We stand with you. A murmur of agreement rose from the gathered villagers. They might not understand glitches or system code, but they understood miracles and threats. As dusk fell, Leo and Elara worked in the farmhouse, the 3 forbidden seeds glowing on the table between them. Elara accessed her residual admin permissions, pulling up schematics of rollback protocols. Kale will likely anchor his rollback to a stable point, she explained, diagrams floating in the air. Probably the system backup from the day before you arrived. He'll overwrite all changes since then. So we need to corrupt that backup, Leo said, his mind racing. Or create so many reality anomalies that the rollback can't process them all. It'll crash like my tutorial exploit did. The seed of paradox, Elara said, pointing. If planted, it creates logical inconsistencies in local physics. The system hates those, it tries to resolve them, consuming processing power. And the seed of void? It creates null zones. Areas the system can't read or write. If Kale's rollback hits one. Buffer overflow, Leo finished, grinning. Perfect. He stood, picking up the seed of paradox. We plant this tonight. By tomorrow, reality around it will start to contradict itself. By the time Kale arrives, he'll be trying to roll back a zone where gravity points sideways and time runs in circles. Elara shook her head, but a smile touched her lips. You're going to break reality to save it. Just a little, Leo said, heading for the door. Come on. We have gardening to do. Outside, under stars that occasionally flickered with data stream artifacts, Leo planted the seed of paradox at the exact center of his farm. As it touched soil, the ground didn't accept it, the seed hovered, rotating, as space itself warped around it. Code strings erupted like glowing roots, digging not into Earth but into the fabric of local reality. Paradox_anchor, activated. Reality_coherence, decaying. Temporal_stability, fluctuating. Elara monitored the system alerts flooding her interface. It's working. The area is registering as critically unstable. Kale's rollback will have to process infinite paradox loops. Leo wiped his hands, looking at the shimmering anomaly growing from his field. Good. Now for phase 2. He held up the seed of void. Where should we plant something that eats reality? As they planned, neither noticed the shadow watching from the tree line, not dragon, not villager, but something with 2 clean lines and perfect stillness. A scout. Kale's advance observer, already gathering data. The battle for Oakhaven had moved from subtle sabotage to open warfare. And Leo's farm was the front line in a war against reality itself. The morning after the dragon's departure hung heavy with anticipation. Leo stood at the edge of his expanded plot, the 3 Genesis seeds cradled in his palm like stolen jewels. They pulsed with a faint, erratic light, pre-system code that seemed to breathe in time with his own heartbeat. Elara watched from the farmhouse doorway, her usual clumsiness replaced by a tense stillness. The admin transmission echoed in both their minds, 48 hours until Kale's arrival, and with him, the forced rollback that would erase everything. We need to move faster, Leo muttered, his glitch sight already active. The world around him dissolved into shimmering lines of code, green for growth variables, blue for time cooldowns, red for stability protocols. His farm was a tapestry of errors, but today, he intended to weave chaos into a weapon. He knelt in the soft soil, ignoring the curious villagers who had gathered at a respectful distance. Old man Harlow, the village elder, leaned on his cane, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. Leo, are you sure about this? The dragons, their seeds. They're our only chance, Leo replied, his fingers tracing the air as he manipulated invisible strings of data. The seed of paradox first. If Kale tries to roll back reality, we'll give him contradictions he can't resolve. With a careful motion, he planted the first Genesis seed. It was unlike any seed he'd handled before, not just a physical object, but a knot of tangled code that resisted his glitch sight. As it touched the earth, the ground shuddered. Lines of corrupted data spiderwebbed out from the planting site, glowing with a sickly purple hue. Leo focused, his mind racing through decades of hacking experience. He found the time cooldown variable attached to the seed's growth cycle, a massive, looping string of numbers that dictated months of waiting. With a mental command, he selected it and pressed the metaphysical delete key. The effect was instantaneous. The seed erupted from the soil, not in a slow unfurling, but in a violent burst of light and matter. Vines shot upward, thick as a man's arm, coiling around each other in impossible geometries. Leaves sprouted and withered in seconds, cycling through seasons in heartbeats. And at the center, fruits began to form, tomatoes, but not as the world knew them. They shimmered with temporal distortions, their surfaces flickering between ripe red and unripe green. Time-warped tomatoes, Leo announced, a grin tugging at his lips despite the gravity of their situation. He plucked one from the vine. In his hand, it felt both solid and ephemeral, as if existing in multiple moments at once. Harvest in seconds, but they'll play havoc with any system trying to enforce linear time. Elara approached cautiously, her admin training making her wary of the raw code swirling around the plant. Leo, the stability metrics. She gestured to a display only she could see, a holographic interface that showed the local system integrity. Numbers were dropping rapidly. You're deleting core variables. This isn't just exploiting bugs anymore, you're rewriting fundamental protocols. That's the point, Leo said, his eyes never leaving the growing anomaly. Kale's rollback will try to restore everything to a previous save state. But if we fill the area with enough temporal contradictions, things that can't exist in a single timeline, the protocol will crash trying to reconcile them. He moved to the next plot, planting the second Genesis seed, the seed of void. This one was colder, absorbing light and sound around it. When he deleted its growth cooldown, the result was even more dramatic. The plant that emerged was barely visible, a ghostly outline that seemed to drink the color from the air. It bore fruits that were perfect spheres of nothingness, voids that hovered among the leaves. Leo reached for one, and his hand passed through it without resistance, coming out tingling with numbness. Void berries, he named them. They don't just resist magic, they erase it. If Kale tries to use any admin spells here, these should disrupt them. As he worked, the village began to change. The prosperity was immediate, baskets filled with glitched produce in minutes, traded for goods that flooded Oakhaven with wealth. Children laughed, chasing after tomatoes that seemed to teleport short distances when touched. But the cost became apparent within hours. Old man Harlow was the first to notice. Leo, he called, his voice trembling. Look at the sky. Leo glanced up. The blue of the morning was shifting, bleeding into hues of violet and chartreuse in patches, as if someone had corrupted a texture file. Then the ground lurched. A chicken coop nearby suddenly floated upward, its wooden planks drifting lazily into the air before crashing down as gravity reasserted itself with a violent snap. Villagers screamed, scrambling for cover. Gravity fluctuations, Elara reported, her interface flashing warnings. Local physics are destabilizing. You're putting too much strain on the reality node beneath us. Leo felt it too, a deep, resonant hum in the code, the hidden server hub that powered the region's laws of nature. His glitch sight revealed it as a glowing nexus of data streams under the farm, now pulsing erratically under the weight of his exploits. He hadn't realized how sensitive it was. We have no choice, he said, sweat beading on his forehead. If we don't break the rollback, none of this will matter anyway. He turned to the third Genesis seed, the seed of chaos, its code so tangled even he couldn't parse it fully. But before he could plant it, a figure emerged from the tree line. It was the scout they'd sensed earlier, now revealed as a young woman in leather armor, her eyes sharp with intelligence. She held up her hands in a gesture of peace. I'm Lyra, she said, her voice clear over the groaning of the earth. From the neighboring village of Pinefall. We've been watching, and suffering. Your glitches aren't contained to Oakhaven anymore. Leo paused, his glitch sight scanning her. She was clean, no admin code, just a low-level adventurer class. What do you mean? Our crops are aging backwards, Lyra explained, stepping closer as colors bled across the path between them. Rivers flow uphill for minutes at a time. People report seeing double of everything. Your farm is tearing reality apart, and it's spreading. Elara's face paled. The node, it's amplifying the effects. Leo, we're causing a cascade failure. For the first time since his exile, Leo felt a flicker of doubt. He'd always seen the code as something to manipulate, a game to win. But these were real people, their lives twisting into nightmares because of his actions. He looked at the seed of chaos in his hand, then at the terrified villagers, at Lyra's earnest face, at Elara's worried eyes. I can try to stabilize it, he said slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. But I need to plant this seed too. It might make things worse before they get better. Old man Harlow stepped forward, his cane sinking into soil that momentarily turned to liquid before solidifying. We trust you, Leo. You saved my granddaughter with that cabbage. If this is what it takes to save our home from the admins, we'll bear the strangeness. Lyra nodded. Pinefall stands with you. Whatever comes. Heartened, Leo planted the seed of chaos. This time, he didn't just delete the time cooldown, he spliced it with fragments of code from the other two seeds, creating a hybrid variable that looped in on itself. The plant that grew was a monstrosity of beauty, flowers that sang in dissonant chords, fruits that changed shape with every blink, roots that dug into the code itself. He called it the Paradox Void Vine, and as it spread, the system's stability plummeted further. The sky fractured into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors. Gravity became a suggestion, with rocks and tools drifting through the air in slow arcs. Time stuttered, moments repeating or skipping entirely. Leo saw a child throw a ball, only for it to hang motionless for 10 seconds before zipping into her hand. Yet, amid the chaos, his farm thrived. The time-warped tomatoes multiplied, their harvest cycles accelerating until the vines produced new fruits every minute. The void berries glimmered like pockets of night, and the paradox void vine wove through it all, tying the glitches together into a defensive web. As dusk fell, a sunset that painted the world in shades of gray and neon pink, Leo gathered the villagers. Kale arrives tomorrow, he said, his voice steady despite the world unraveling around them. When he triggers the rollback, all this. He gestured to the shimmering fields, the floating debris, the singing flowers. Will become a paradox too complex for the system to resolve. It should crash the protocol, or at least buy us time. Elara stood beside him, her admin interface now showing critical alerts. But the node is under immense stress. If we push it too far, we might not just break the rollback, we might break reality permanently here. Lyra added, and what about after? If we survive, how do we live in a world where up and down don't always work? Leo looked out over his glitched farm, the place that was supposed to be his quiet retirement. In the flickering light, he saw not just chaos, but potential. We adapt, he said softly. We learn to farm the fractures. And if the admins want to take this from us, they'll have to face a reality that doesn't play by their rules anymore. That night, as he lay in his bed, the farmhouse creaked with the strain of fluctuating physics. Through his glitch sight, he watched the reality node pulse like a wounded heart, its code fraying at the edges. He thought of the dragons, the admins, the villagers who had placed their faith in him. For the first time, he wasn't just hacking a system, he was building a new one, piece by broken piece. And as sleep finally took him, the last thing he saw was the seed of chaos's vine curling around his window, its flowers whispering secrets in a language only the code could understand. The morning sun rose over Oakhaven, but it did so in fractured light. The sky above Leo's farm shimmered with prismatic distortions, patches of azure blue bleeding into violet, then shifting abruptly to a sickly green. Gravity pulsed in uneven waves, causing dewdrops on the time-warped tomatoes to float upward before splashing back down. The paradox void vine coiled around the farmhouse chimney, its blossoms humming with contradictory frequencies that made the air taste of both honey and static. Leo stood at the edge of his transformed fields, glitch sight active. To normal eyes, the farm was a surreal wonderland of impossibly fast-growing crops and reality-bending flora. To Leo, it was a tapestry of glowing code strings, some neatly woven, others frayed and sparking with errors. He watched as the local system stability metrics flickered in his vision, stability, 42%, critical anomalies detected. The node stress is increasing, Elara said, joining him with a worried frown. She'd abandoned her clumsy farmhand act weeks ago, now moving with the grace of someone who understood both soil and code. Every time you accelerate growth or create a hybrid, it strains the reality node beneath us. The admins will notice. They already have, Leo replied, his eyes never leaving the shimmering fields. That's why Kale's coming. Second patch, remember. More aggressive than you were. Elara flushed slightly. I was never aggressive. Just, inefficient at sabotage. Which is why I kept you, Leo said with a faint smile. Your knowledge of admin protocols has been useful. Now, about Kale, what do we know? Enforcer class admin, Elara recited, her voice taking on the formal tone she used when discussing system matters. Specializes in forced corrections and rollbacks. He won't try subtle sabotage like I did. He'll trigger a full system rollback on your farm, rewind everything to before your first glitch exploit. Erase it all. Leo nodded, his mind already working through the code implications. A rollback would be a brute force attack, overriding current reality states with backup data. But every system had vulnerabilities, and Leo had spent his entire career finding them. The Genesis seeds are ready, he said, gesturing toward 3 peculiar plants at the farm center. The time-warped tomatoes glowed with temporal energy, their vines moving in stop-motion bursts. The void berries pulsed with anti-gravity fields, floating inches above their stems. And the paradox void vine, it existed in 2 states simultaneously, both flowering and barren. They're beautiful, Scout Lyra said, approaching from the farmhouse where she'd been staying since reporting the anomalies in Pinefall. Her eyes, sharp from years of wilderness tracking, widened at the sight. And terrifying. The color shifts reached our village yesterday. Children's drawings started changing colors mid-stroke. Reality contamination, Leo murmured. The glitches are spreading beyond my farm. That's going to make Kale even more determined. As if summoned by the thought, a notification flashed in Leo's vision, not the usual system messages, but a priority alert with admin encryption, incoming correction, Enforcer Kale arriving, ETA 15 minutes. He's early, Elara breathed, her hands trembling slightly. Or we're late, Leo said, already moving. Lyra, get the villagers to shelter. Elara, monitor the node stress levels. I need to be at the stall when he arrives. The vegetable stall looked deceptively normal from the outside, just a simple wooden counter piled with produce. Only upon closer inspection would one notice the pumpkins that reflected light like polished metal, or the cabbages that seemed to pulse with warmth. Leo arranged a display of error apples, their skins shimmering with corrupted texture files. He didn't have to wait long. A merchant's cart rumbled down Oakhaven's main road, drawn by two ordinary-looking horses. The man driving it appeared middle-aged, with stern features and practical traveler's clothes. But Leo's glitch sight revealed the truth. Beneath the merchant disguise, Kale's avatar glowed with admin authorization codes, and his cart wasn't carrying goods, it was packed with rollback protocols, ready to deploy. "Good morning," Kale said, his voice carefully neutral as he halted the cart. "I hear you sell remarkable produce." "That depends on what you find remarkable," Leo replied, polishing an apple that briefly turned transparent before solidifying again. "Some call it miraculous. Others call it anomalous." Kale's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm a collector of rare items. I understand you grew these, unusually quickly." "Time is flexible if you know how to bend it," Leo said, watching as Kale's hidden interface began scanning the stall. He could see the code probes, invisible to normal sight, testing the produce, the soil, even the air. "Flexible," Kale repeated, stepping down from the cart. "Or broken. The system has rules for a reason, farmer. Growth cycles, physics constants, reality coherence, these aren't suggestions. They're limitations," Leo corrected gently. "And limitations exist to be understood, then worked around." "Worked around?" Kale's facade of civility began to crack. "You've caused stability drops across 3 villages. Gravity fluctuations in Oakhaven. Temporal anomalies in Pinefall. The system is fraying because of your gardening." Leo picked up a time-warp tomato. It ripened in his hand, then unripened, caught in a 2-second loop. "Everything has a cost. But look at what it produces." He gestured to the thriving farm behind him, where villagers who'd once struggled now had full bellies and warm homes. "It produces chaos," Kale snapped. His merchant disguise flickered, just for an instant, revealing the sleek, silver and blue uniform of a system enforcer beneath. "And chaos cannot be tolerated. I'm here to correct this anomaly." "Correction?" Leo feigned ignorance. "You mean you want to buy something?" "I mean I'm triggering a full system rollback on this location," Kale said, all pretense dropping. His hands moved in a complex gesture, and the cart behind him dissolved into streams of light that reconfigured into a control console floating in midair. "Everything you've done here, every glitch, every exploit, every broken rule, will be undone. The farm will revert to its state 6 months ago. You'll be left with barren soil and the memory of failure." Leo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. A rollback wasn't just destruction, it was erasure. All the growth, all the innovations, all the relationships he'd built with Elara and the villagers, wiped clean as if they'd never happened. "You can't," he said, but it wasn't a plea. It was a statement of fact. "Watch me," Kale replied, and his fingers danced across the floating console. The air began to hum. Not with the pleasant buzz of bees, but with the deep, resonant frequency of reality being rewritten. Leo's glitch sight flared to life, showing him the rollback protocols unfolding like a wave of erasing light. Code strings representing his farm, the accelerated growth cycles, the hybrid plants, the stabilized soil, began to flicker as backup data overwrote them. The time-warp tomatoes shuddered. Their temporal loop stuttered, then reversed. Vines that had grown overnight began to shrink back toward seeds that no longer existed. The void berry's anti-gravity fields collapsed, dropping the fruits to the ground with unnatural heaviness. "Stop!" Elara cried, rushing from the farmhouse. "Kale, you don't understand what you're doing. The reality node is why this corruption must be purged," Kale interrupted, not looking at her. "A node this unstable threatens the entire regional system. The rollback will reset it to factory settings." But Leo wasn't watching the destruction. He was watching the code. The rollback protocol was elegant, it swept forward in a clean wave, replacing corrupted data with clean backups. But like all elegant systems, it had assumptions. It assumed the data it was overwriting would be passive. It assumed the target wouldn't fight back. And Leo had spent the morning planting contradictions. As the rollback wave reached the Genesis seeds, it encountered the paradox void vine first. The protocol tried to override its dual-state existence with a single, consistent backup. But the vine's very nature was contradiction, it existed in two states simultaneously. The rollback code hesitated, trying to resolve the paradox. In that hesitation, Leo struck. His glitch sight focused on the buffer handling the rollback data. Every system had buffers, temporary storage for information being processed. And every buffer had a size limit. Leo watched as the rollback protocol, confused by the paradox vine, began stuffing more and more data into its processing buffer, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. "What are you doing?" Kale demanded, his console flashing with warnings. "The rollback is stalling." "It's thinking," Leo said calmly, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Manipulating live system code was like performing brain surgery on a conscious patient. One wrong move could cause catastrophic failure. He reached out with his will, not to stop the rollback, but to help it. Using glitch sight, he fed more contradictory data into the buffer. The time-warped tomatoes, with their reverse temporal states. The void berries, which simultaneously had weight and weightlessness. The very air around the farm, which existed in multiple color states at once. The buffer filled. And filled. And filled. "Buffer overflow in progress," Leo whispered, watching the code with grim satisfaction. On Kale's console, error messages exploded across the display: rollback protocol error, buffer overflow detected, data corruption in progress, aborting correction. "No!" Kale shouted, his hands flying across the controls. "That's impossible. Rollback protocols have overflow safeguards." "They have safeguards against normal overflows," Leo agreed. "But I'm not feeding them normal data. I'm feeding them reality contradictions. Your buffer is trying to process states that cannot logically coexist. It's like trying to pour the ocean into a teacup. Eventually, something breaks. And break it did. With a sound like shattering glass, the rollback wave collapsed in on itself. The erasing light flickered, then fragmented into 1,000 glittering shards that hung in the air before dissolving. Kale's console erupted in a cascade of glitches, the display showing nonsense characters, the controls responding randomly, the entire interface corrupting before their eyes. But the real damage was to Kale himself. As the rollback failed, feedback surged through his admin connection. His avatar flickered violently, the merchant disguise and enforcer uniform alternating so rapidly he became a blur of conflicting images. Error messages scrolled across his vision, Leo could see them glowing in the air around Kale's head. Identity conflict, merchant/enforcer. Reality coherence lost. System integrity compromised. What did you do to me?" Kale gasped, clutching his head. His voice echoed strangely, as if multiple people were speaking at once. "I gave your system a paradox it couldn't resolve," Leo said, stepping forward. The farm around them stabilized as the failed rollback dissipated. The time-warped tomatoes resumed their loops. The color shifts in the air settled into a gentle, prismatic shimmer. "Your interface is trying to process two conflicting reality states, the merchant you're pretending to be, and the enforcer you actually are. Until it resolves that conflict, you're effectively locked out of system functions." Kale stared at his hands, which kept shifting between calloused merchant's palms and smooth admin gloves. "This is unacceptable. The admins will send another patch." Leo finished for him. "Maybe. But tell them this, I'm not trying to break the system. I'm trying to understand it. And if they keep sending people to erase my work, next time I won't just lock them out. I'll show them what happens when someone who understands code decides to really break things." For a long moment, Kale just stood there, his form flickering between identities. Then, with a sound of frustration, he turned and stumbled toward what remained of his cart, now just a confused pile of wood and glowing code fragments. He didn't look back as he fled down the road, his form glitching with every step. Silence fell over the farm. Then Alara let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for minutes. You counterhacked a system enforcer," she whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. "No one does that. No one can." "I just did," Leo said, but his triumph felt hollow. He looked at the Genesis seeds, which had survived the rollback attempt but now glowed with unstable energy. The Paradox Void Vine had grown 3 new blossoms, each humming with even more contradictory frequencies. The node stress just spiked to 67%, Alara reported, her eyes distant as she accessed system metrics. That rollback attempt, it didn't just fail. It left scars in the local reality code. Leo nodded, already seeing the damage with glitch sight. Fissures in the metaphysical fabric around the farm. Lingering corruption from the buffer overflow. And something else, a deeper instability in the reality node itself, as if their confrontation had awakened something that should have remained dormant. He'll be back, Lyra said, joining them. Her tracker's instincts were on high alert. Or someone worse will. I know, Leo said quietly. He looked at his farm, the glitched crops, the shimmering air, the villagers peering nervously from their homes. This was supposed to be his retirement. A quiet life of simple farming. But as he watched the last of Kale's glitching form disappear down the road, Leo understood the truth: there would be no quiet life. Not when he held the power to break reality's rules. Not when the system admins saw him as a threat to be eliminated. He turned to Alara. Monitor the node. I need to know if that stress is temporary or something worse. What are you going to do? She asked. Leo looked at the paradox void vine, its blossoms pulsing with impossible light. I'm going to prepare. Because next time, they won't send an enforcer with a rollback. They'll send something designed specifically to handle glitches. And as he spoke, deep beneath the farm, in the hidden heart of the reality node, something stirred in response to the day's conflicts. Something ancient, and hungry, and very, very aware of the man who could bend code like clay. The morning after Kale's humiliating retreat dawned with an unsettling quiet. Leo stood at the edge of his pumpkin patch, his glitch sight active, watching the world unravel in streams of luminous code. The air shimmered with residual errors from the failed rollback, flickering pixels of blue and gold danced like fireflies, and the ground beneath his feet pulsed with a faint, irregular rhythm. He could see the metaphysical scars Kale had left behind, jagged lines of corrupted data snaking through the soil, causing patches of grass to phase in and out of existence. The reality node stress, which he'd mentally logged at 67%, now felt palpable, a low hum vibrating through his bones. It's getting worse, Leo muttered to himself, kneeling to touch the earth. His fingers brushed against a time-warped tomato vine, its code strings glowing with accelerated growth variables he deleted days ago. But now, those strings were fraying, unraveling into chaotic loops that made the tomatoes ripen and rot in seconds. He sighed, the weight of his discoveries pressing on him. This wasn't just random glitches anymore, something was amplifying them, and he needed answers. He spent the morning tending to his crops, his mind racing. The villagers of Oakhaven had grown accustomed to the oddities. They gave wide berth to the patch where gravity occasionally inverted, sending pebbles floating upward, and they whispered prayers when colors shifted to impossible hues at noon. But today, the anomalies were more pronounced. As Leo harvested a batch of error apples, he noticed their stat boost variables were fluctuating wildly, some granting strength boosts that shattered the wooden crate he placed them in. He stored them carefully, his thoughts drifting to Alara. She'd been unusually quiet since Kale's attack, spending hours in the farmhouse, poring over old system manuals she'd brought with her. By midday, Leo decided to confront her. He found her in the makeshift study he'd set up, a room cluttered with scrolls, glowing data crystals, and the faint scent of ozone from active code displays. Alara was hunched over a large, holographic map of the region, her fingers tracing lines of energy that converged directly beneath his farm. Her usually graceful demeanor was tense, and when she looked up, her eyes held a fear Leo hadn't seen before. Alara, Leo said, leaning against the doorframe. We need to talk. The glitches are intensifying. I've been scanning the land, and there's a pattern. All the code errors radiate from a central point right here. He gestured downward, his glitch sight highlighting a dense cluster of pulsating data streams beneath the farmhouse. Alara took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. I know, Leo. I've been trying to verify it. But what I've found, it's worse than I imagined. She stood, walking to the window that overlooked the fields. Do you remember when I first arrived, sent by the admins to sabotage you? I was briefed on high-priority anomalies, but there was one file marked, Eyes Only, a report on reality nodes. Leo's interest sharpened. Reality nodes? I've heard rumors in my hacking days, whispers about server hubs that anchor local physics. But I thought they were myths, admin propaganda to scare off explorers. They're very real, Alara said, turning to face him. Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if afraid the walls themselves might listen. Reality nodes are hidden infrastructure points where the system's core code interfaces with the physical world. They control everything from gravity to time flow in their vicinity. Most are buried deep, inaccessible, but a few surface in places like this, where the code is thin or damaged. She activated the holographic map again, zooming in on Oakhaven. A three-dimensional model of the farm appeared, with a glowing, spherical node embedded deep underground, connected by tendrils of light to every glitched crop Leo had planted. Your farm sits directly atop one, Leo. That's why your glitch site works so powerfully here, the node amplifies your ability to manipulate code. It's also why the errors are so concentrated. Every exploit you perform strains it, and Kale's rollback attack pushed it to the brink. Leo stared at the hologram, his mind connecting the dots. The neutron star pumpkins, the time-warp tomatoes, the paradoxical vines, all of them drew from this node, tapping into its raw control over reality. He felt a mix of awe and dread. So this is why the admins are so desperate to shut me down. It's not just about the glitches, it's about controlling the node. Elara nodded grimly. Yes, but it's not just the main admin faction. There are rogues, Leo, admins who've gone off-grid, seeking to seize nodes for themselves. With control over a reality node, they could rewrite local laws of physics, create unstoppable armies, or even crash entire regions. Your farm is a prime target because it's active and exposed. The glitches you've created are like a beacon, drawing them in. As she spoke, Leo's glitch site flared, showing him the node's code in real time. It was a complex web of variables and functions, some parts pristine, others corrupted by his own exploits. He could see stress points where data packets were overloading, causing the flickers and shifts in reality. How many rogue factions are there? He asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension. At least 3 that I know of, Elara replied. The most dangerous is led by Malker, a former high-ranking admin who was exiled for attempting to hack the central system. He's ruthless, and he's been hunting nodes for years. If he learns about this one, she trailed off, her expression haunted. Leo paced the room, his boots clicking against the wooden floor. We need to fortify this place. If the node is that valuable, we can't let anyone take it. But first, I need to understand it better. Can you help me access its core code? Elara hesitated, then nodded. I can try. My admin training included basic node protocols, but it's risky. If we tamper too much, we could trigger a cascade failure, reality here could unravel completely. We don't have a choice, Leo said, determination hardening his features. If rogues are coming, we need every advantage. Let's start with a deep scan. They spent the afternoon in the study, Elara guiding Leo through ancient system interfaces while he used his glitch site to probe the node. The process was exhausting, every incursion into the code sent ripples through the farm. Outside, the sky darkened prematurely, and strange, geometric shadows stretched across the fields. At one point, a patch of soil turned to liquid glass, reflecting the distorted clouds above. As they worked, Elara shared more details. The nodes were created during the system's founding, meant to stabilize reality after the Great Integration. But over time, some developed flaws, like yours, which seems to have a corruption in its time synchronization module. That's why you can delete cooldown variables so easily. Leo grinned despite the gravity of the situation. So I've been exploiting a bug in the bug. Perfect. By evening, they had a breakthrough. Leo's glitch site pierced through layers of encryption, revealing the node's core, a crystalline structure of pure data, floating in a metaphysical space beneath the farmhouse. It was beautiful and terrifying, pulsing with raw power. But around it, he saw signs of intrusion, foreign code fragments, like digital scars, where someone had tried to hack in before. Malker, Elara whispered, pointing to a signature in the code. He's already been here, probing from a distance. He must know about the node, but he hasn't attacked yet because he's waiting for the right moment, or because he fears what you might do. Leo's hands clenched. Then we make sure he regrets ever looking this way. We need defenses, Elara. Not just physical ones, but code-based. Can we use the node to create permanent glitches? Like the invincible walls I imagined during Kale's attack. Possibly, Elara said, her eyes lighting up with a mix of fear and excitement. But it would require splicing node functions with your crop data. It's never been done, the admins would consider it heresy. Good, Leo replied, a fierce smile spreading across his face. Let's give them something to really panic about. They worked late into the night, Leo manipulating code strings while Elara monitored for stability. He started with the paradox void vine, extracting its contradictory data and weaving it into the node's defensive protocols. The result was a shimmering, translucent barrier that appeared around the farm's perimeter, a wall of light that phased in and out of existence, impossible to bypass with conventional logic. Next, he used the error apple's stat boost variables to create a field that temporarily enhanced the villagers' abilities, should they need to fight. But as they pushed the node further, the stress climbed. Leo's glitch sight showed it hitting 75%, then 80%. The farmhouse groaned, and outside, reality began to fracture in earnest. A tree split into two identical copies, each occupying the same space. The river behind the farm flowed backward, then froze in midair. Elara gripped Leo's arm, her knuckles white. "Leo, we have to stop. If we go past 90%, the node might overload, and everything within miles could be erased." Leo took a deep breath, pulling back his manipulations. The barriers held, but the cost was evident. The sky above Oakhaven now swirled with auroras of corrupted code, and the air tasted of static. He deactivated his glitch sight, the world snapping back to a semblance of normalcy, though the unease lingered. "We've bought some time," he said, his voice weary. "But Malker will come. And when he does, we'll be ready." Elara looked at him, admiration and worry warring in her eyes. "You're playing with forces even the admins fear, Leo. What if we can't control it?" Leo gazed out at his glitched crops, the pumpkins gleaming with unnatural density, the tomatoes twisting through time. "I retired to this farm to escape the system's rules. Now, I'm not just breaking them, I'm rewriting them. If that makes me a target, so be it. But this node is mine, and I'll defend it with every glitch I can muster." As they prepared to rest, a notification flickered at the edge of Leo's vision, a data packet, encrypted and untraceable. He opened it with a thought, and words formed in his mind, "The node awakens. Expect company soon. M." Leo showed it to Elara, and she paled. "Malker. He's closer than we thought." They stood in silence, the weight of the coming storm settling over them. The reality node hummed beneath their feet, a heartbeat of glitched reality, and Leo knew his quiet retirement was over. He had uncovered the heart of the glitch, and now, he would have to fight for it. The morning sun should have painted Oakhaven in warm gold, but instead it fractured through the air like broken glass. Leo stood at the edge of his field, the reality node's hum vibrating through the soles of his worn boots. He'd barely slept, the encrypted message from Malker burning in his mind, "The node will be ours. Stand aside or be deleted." Elara approached, her usual clumsy grace replaced by tense alertness. She carried a basket of what looked like ordinary turnips, but Leo's glitch sight revealed their true nature, spliced data strings pulsing with defensive protocols. "The villagers are evacuated to the cellar," she reported, her voice low. "Kale's keeping watch at the North Ridge. He says the system's reporting anomalous energy spikes moving toward us." Leo nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon where the sky began to warp. Colors bled into each other, green grass tinting violet, the blue sky streaking with crimson code lines only he could see. The node stress level, which he'd pushed to 80% yesterday while creating the defensive barriers, now flickered at 85% in his vision. Every glitch they'd woven into the farm's code was a strain on reality itself. "They're here," Elara whispered. The attack began not with a roar, but with a silence that swallowed sound. From the forest edge, 3 figures emerged, not walking, but phasing through the trees as if reality were a poorly rendered image. Malker led them, his form shimmering with admin authority. He wore sleek black armor that seemed to drink the light, and his eyes glowed with the cold blue of system oversight. Behind him, 2 enforcers moved with mechanical precision, their hands crackling with containment algorithms. "Leo," Malker's voice echoed, distorted by spatial glitches. "You've been a fascinating anomaly. But this ends now. Hand over the node's core access codes." Leo forced a casual smile, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Sorry, fresh out. But I've got some nice pumpkins if you're interested. They're a bit heavy, though." Malker didn't laugh. He raised a hand, and the air thickened. Leo's glitch sight flared to life, revealing the attack, a wave of code purge commands aimed at the node's defenses. "Now!" Leo shouted. He slammed his hands onto the soil, feeling the node's core through the earth. With a mental command, he activated the barriers. Walls of light erupted from the ground, not solid but made of flickering, glitched pixels that phased in and out of existence. They surrounded the farmhouse and fields, humming with distorted energy. One of Malker's enforcers lunged forward, only to rebound off the barrier as if hitting a wall of fragmented glass. "Primitive," Malker sneered. "You're using node functions like a child with a stolen tool." He didn't attack the barriers directly. Instead, he began typing in the air, his fingers leaving trails of glowing runes. Leo watched, horrified, as Malker's counterhack unfolded. The admin wasn't trying to break the barriers, he was rewriting their source code. In Leo's vision, the walls of light began to destabilize, their data strings unraveling like torn threads. Elara, the turnips. Leo yelled, his voice strained. Elara hurled the basket toward the barriers. As the glitched turnips passed through the light walls, they activated, exploding into clouds of bearer dust that swarmed Malker's enforcers. The dust wasn't physical, it was pure corrupted data that clogged their interfaces. One enforcer staggered, his armor flickering as his system connection glitched. But Malker remained unaffected. He finished his typing, and with a dismissive wave, the barriers shattered. Not with a crash, but with a sound like shattering data, a high-pitched screech that made Leo's teeth ache. The light walls dissolved into fading pixels, and the node's stress level jumped to 90%. Fall back. Leo grabbed Elara's arm, pulling her toward the farmhouse. Behind them, Malker advanced, his enforcers recovering and flanking him. The air crackled with hostile code, and the ground trembled as the node struggled under the assault. They sprinted across the field, past rows of time-warped tomatoes that withered in seconds as reality fluctuations aged them prematurely. Leo's mind raced. Malker's hack had been too clean, too precise, he'd known exactly how to dismantle the barriers. That meant he'd studied the node's code during his prior intrusions, maybe even left backdoors. A bolt of containment energy sizzled past Leo's head, searing the air. He ducked behind a shed, Elara pressing close beside him. Her breath came in quick gasps. He's too strong, Leo. He's a high-tier admin, his access privileges override most glitches. Then we don't fight his privileges, Leo muttered, his glitch sight scanning the shed's wooden planks. He found a weak point, a save-state error in the materials code from when he duplicated it weeks ago. With a focused thought, he triggered it. The shed flickered, duplicating into 3 identical copies that phased around them, creating a momentary maze. Malker's enforcers hesitated, confused by the sudden spatial glitch. But Malker simply waved a hand, and the duplicates collapsed into data fragments. Clever, he called, his voice closer now. But wasteful. Every glitch strains the node further. How long until it crashes and takes this village with it? Leo didn't answer. He and Elara burst from behind the collapsing shed, making a dash for the farmhouse. The door was only 20 paces away, but it felt like miles. Malker's enforcers closed in, their movements synchronized like programmed attacks. Just as Leo reached the porch, one enforcer lunged, grabbing his arm. Leo's glitch sight flared instinctively. He didn't see flesh and bone, he saw the enforcer's code, a rigid structure of permissions and protocols. With a mental shove, he deleted the grab command variable. The enforcer's hand spasmed open, and Leo wrenched free, stumbling through the farmhouse door. Elara slammed it shut behind them, bolting it with a heavy wooden bar. Outside, Malker's laughter echoed, cold and mocking. Hiding in your little house. The node's core is beneath this farm, Leo. I can claim it from here. Inside, the farmhouse was a chaotic sanctuary. Glitched crops lined the shelves, pumpkins that glowed with internal density, cabbages that pulsed with suspended decay. Leo leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. Elara checked the windows, her face pale. They're surrounding us. Kale's still at the ridge, I think they've pinned him down too. Leo's mind churned. Malker was right, every defensive glitch was pushing the node toward collapse. At 90% stress, reality was already fraying. Through the window, he saw the sky ripple like water, and a patch of grass turned inside out, revealing glitching code beneath. But retreating here wasn't a victory, it was a delay. Malker would hack the node from outside, and without the barriers, nothing stopped him. We need a new plan, Leo said, his voice steadying. He's countering everything I throw at him because he's reading the node's code in real time. But what if we give him something he can't read? Elara frowned. Like what? Leo's eyes fell on a basket of error apples, their skins shimmering with broken stat boost data. An idea sparked, dangerous, reckless, but maybe the only way. The node's core has redundancy protocols, right? Backup systems that activate if the main code gets corrupted. Yes, but triggering those could cause a full reality reset in this area, Elara warned. It's a last resort failsafe. Then let's make it look like the node's corrupting itself, Leo said, a grim smile touching his lips. If Malker thinks the core is crashing, He might back off to avoid getting caught in the reset. But we'll need to make it convincing. Outside, a heavy thud shook the farmhouse, Malker's enforcers testing the door. Time was running out. Leo closed his eyes, diving deep into his glitch site. He reached out through the floorboards, feeling the node's core beneath, a pulsating heart of reality code. Carefully, he began to weave a new glitch, not a barrier, but a mimic. He copied fragments of the error apple's broken data and spliced them into the node's output streams, creating the illusion of cascading corruption. In the yard, Malker paused, his glowing eyes widening. The air shimmered with false error messages, core integrity failing, reality matrix unstable. The ground trembled more violently, and cracks of light split the soil, leaking distorted colors. Malker's enforcers stepped back, uncertain. He's bluffing, Malker snapped, but a hint of doubt crept into his voice. He typed rapidly, scanning the node's code. Leo held his breath, pouring his focus into the mimic glitch, making it swarm with chaotic data that mirrored a true collapse. For a long moment, Malker hesitated. Then, with a frustrated snarl, he gestured to his enforcers. Fall back. The node's too unstable, if it resets now, we lose our chance. We'll return when it stabilizes. They phased away, dissolving into the warped air. The pressure lifted, but Leo didn't relax. He kept the mimic glitch active until Malker's energy signatures faded from his glitch site. Only then did he release it, slumping against the wall as exhaustion washed over him. Ilara peered outside. They're gone. For now. Leo nodded, his mind already racing ahead. The mimic had bought them time, but Malker would be back, and next time, he'd be prepared. The node stress level had spiked to 95% during the glitch, and reality fractures were spreading. Through the window, he saw a tree floating 3 feet off the ground, its roots dangling in glitched space. We can't keep defending like this, Leo said quietly. We need to understand why Malker wants this node so badly. And we need allies who can fight on his level. Ilara met his gaze, her expression resolute. Then we start digging deeper. Into the node, into Malker's motives. But first, we check on the villagers and Kale. As they stepped outside, the farm lay battered but standing. The battle was over, but the war for the reality node had just begun, and Leo knew his retreat to the farmhouse was only the first move in a much larger game. The farmhouse felt smaller than ever, its wooden walls groaning under the weight of the fractured reality outside. Leo stood by the window, his fingers tracing the faint, shimmering lines of system code that now pulsed erratically through the air like a dying heartbeat. The reality node beneath his farm was at 95% stress, he could see it in the way the light bent at impossible angles, how the shadows whispered with static, and how the very soil seemed to breathe in shallow, panicked gasps. Ilara hovered at his side, her usual clumsiness replaced by a tense alertness. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the simple farming tools they'd gathered, hoes, rakes, and a few rusty shovels. The villagers are scared, Leo, she said, her voice low. They saw the barriers fail. They saw Malker's hacks tear through your defenses like paper. They don't understand code or glitches, they just know the sky is bleeding colors and the ground won't hold still. Leo turned from the window, his eyes glowing with the soft blue light of his glitch sight. He'd spent the last hour scanning the node's code, mapping its fractures. Fear is a variable we can manipulate, he murmured, more to himself than to her. If they're scared of the unknown, we give them something to hold on to. Something they can see. He strode to the center of the room, where a rough wooden table held a collection of seeds, ordinary-looking kernels of corn, wheat, and pumpkin, but each one shimmering with corrupted data strings under his vision. These were his latest experiments, spliced from the node's own erratic output. Call them in, Ilara. Everyone who's willing to fight. Within minutes, the farmhouse was crowded with the people of Oakhaven. Old man Heston, his gnarled hands gripping a walking stick, stood beside young Mara, a girl of no more than 12 whose eyes were wide with a mix of terror and awe. There were a dozen others, farmers, merchants, even the blacksmith, Braun, who'd brought his heavy hammer as if it could smash code itself. They shifted uneasily, the air thick with the scent of sweat and ozone. Leo raised his hands, and the room fell silent. Listen, he began, his voice calm but carrying an edge of urgency. Malker and his rogues aren't here for your land or your gold. They're here for the heart of reality itself, the node beneath us. If they take it, Oakhaven won't just be destroyed. It'll be unwritten. Erased from existence. A murmur of panic rippled through the crowd. Braun stepped forward, his face grim. What can we do? We're not hackers or warriors. We plant crops and mend fences. That's exactly why you can help, Leo said, a faint smile touching his lips. He picked up a pumpkin seed, holding it aloft. Under his glitch sight, its code flickered, a simple growth timer, a density variable, and a new line he'd inserted, Guardian_protocol, activate_on_threat. The system is built on rules. Rules I can break. And now, I'm going to teach you how to bend them, just a little. He spent the next hour in a whirlwind of instruction. Using his glitch sight, he showed them how to see the world's underlying code, not in detail, but as faint, shimmering outlines around objects. He taught them to focus on simple exploits, a save-state error to duplicate a rock, a physics glitch to make a thrown stone hover midair. It was crude, basic stuff, but the villagers' eyes lit up as they fumbled through the motions. Mara managed to make a pebble duplicate into two, and she giggled with delight, the sound cutting through the tension. Good, Leo said, nodding. Now, for the real weapon. He gathered the glitched seeds, handing them out. Each villager received a handful, corn, wheat, pumpkin, each one pulsing with potential. These are glitch seeds. Plant them where you stand to defend. When danger approaches, they'll sprout into guardians, temporary constructs of light and code. They won't last long, but they'll buy us time. Elara moved among them, her admin training making her a natural instructor. Don't think of it as magic, she told Old Man Heston, who was squinting at a seed as if it might bite him. Think of it as gardening. You're just planting a different kind of crop. The old man chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. Been farming 60 years. Never grew a soldier before. As the villagers dispersed to take up positions around the farmhouse, Leo and Elara stepped outside. The world was a tapestry of glitches. The sky swirled with patches of midnight blue and neon green, and the ground trembled with low-frequency vibrations. In the distance, Malker's forces were regrouping, a dozen figures in dark, streamlined armor that seemed to drink the light, their movements synchronized like parts of a machine. They're coming, Elara whispered, her hand going to the simple dagger at her belt. Leo, are you sure this will work? These people aren't fighters. They don't need to be, Leo said, his eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. They just need to believe they can hold the line. Malker led the charge, his form cutting through the distorted air like a blade. He was tall, with sharp features and eyes that glowed with the cold light of admin authority. His armor was inscribed with runes that actively suppressed glitches. Leo could see them as null fields in the code, swallowing errors whole. Leo. Malker's voice boomed, amplified by a sound system hack that made the very air vibrate. Your tricks are spent. Hand over the node, and I'll make your erasure painless. Leo didn't bother with a reply. He raised a hand, and the villagers planted their glitch seeds. The effect was instantaneous. Where seeds touched the earth, beams of light erupted, shimmering, translucent forms taking shape. A pumpkin seed grew into a hulking, orange-skinned guardian with fists like boulders. A corn kernel sprouted a slender, spear-wielding sentinel made of golden light. A wheat seed became a swift, darting scout with blades for hands. They weren't alive, not truly, they were projections of code, given temporary form by the node's energy. The guardians surged forward, meeting Malker's forces in a clash of light and shadow. The battle was chaos incarnate. Braun swung his hammer at a rogue admin, only for a pumpkin guardian to intercept the blow, its form flickering but holding. Mara ducked behind a wheat sentinel as it parried an energy bolt with a blur of motion. Old Man Heston stood his ground, planting seeds in a circle around him, creating a small fortress of glowing defenders. Leo moved through the fray, his glitch sight active. He spotted weaknesses in the admin armor, tiny gaps in their null fields. With a flick of his wrist, he injected a corruption string into one soldier's systems, causing his armor to lock up and seize. The man stumbled, and a corn guardian speared him through the chest, the code dissipating into pixels. Elara fought at his side, using her knowledge of admin protocols to predict attacks. She hacked into a rogue's communication line, feeding him false data that made him turn on his ally. They're too coordinated, she shouted over the din, Malker's directing them like a symphony. And he was. Leo could see it in the code. Malker stood at the rear, his hands moving in precise gestures as he issued commands through a hidden interface. The rogues moved with unnatural efficiency, adapting to the Guardian's patterns. One by one, the glitched constructs began to falter. A pumpkin guardian dissolved into sparks as a null field enveloped it. A wheat sentinel was erased by a targeted data deletion hack. The villagers were tiring, their belief wavering. Leo felt a knot of desperation tighten in his chest. He'd hoped the Guardians would be enough to drive Malker back, but the rogue admin was too skilled, too prepared. Then Malker smiled, a cold, cruel twist of his lips. He raised a hand, and from a portal of swirling darkness, he summoned his weapon. It emerged slowly, a creature of pure void. It had no distinct shape, flowing like liquid shadow, but it pulsed with a hunger that Leo could feel in his bones. His glitch sight screamed in warning, this thing was a walking error in itself. Entity _identified, Code Eater, the system whispered in his mind, the words laced with panic. Function, consume _glitches. Threat _level, catastrophic. The Code Eater moved, and where it passed, the glitches died. A pumpkin guardian flickered and vanished, sucked into its form. The distorted colors in the sky smoothed into bland uniformity. The very code of the node strained, as if being pulled toward the creature. The villagers cried out, their makeshift defenses crumbling. What is that? Ilara gasped, her face pale. My insurance, Malker called out, his voice dripping with triumph. While you were playing farmer, I was cultivating a solution. The Code Eater feeds on anomalies. It will devour your glitches, your node, and then you, Leo. There will be nothing left to hack. The creature surged forward, and Leo acted on instinct. He threw up a barrier of corrupted code, a wall of shimmering errors meant to slow it down. The Code Eater hit the barrier and absorbed it. The wall dissolved, and the creature grew larger, more solid. It was learning, adapting. Panic threatened to overwhelm him. This wasn't just a battle for the farm anymore, it was a battle for the integrity of reality itself. If the Code Eater consumed the node, the glitches that sustained Oakhaven would vanish, and with them, the village. Leo's mind raced, scanning the creature's code. It was a complex web of deletion protocols, but at its core, it was still a part of the system. And everything in the system had a weakness. Ilara, the villagers, fall back to the farmhouse. Leo shouted, his voice raw. I need time. She nodded, already herding the exhausted defenders toward safety. Leo stood alone before the advancing Code Eater, his hands glowing with blue light. He delved deep into his glitch sight, ignoring the screams of the dying glitches around him. He saw the creature's core, a nexus of consumption algorithms, constantly rewriting itself to handle new data. An idea sparked, fragile and desperate. The Code Eater fed on glitches, but what if he gave it something it couldn't digest? Something so broken, so inherently flawed, that it would overload its systems. He reached into the node's code, pulling at the frayed edges of reality. He didn't try to create a glitch, he tried to create a paradox. A simple, impossible command, consume _this, null. It was nonsense, a logical error that shouldn't exist. He wrapped it in layers of corrupted data and hurled it at the Code Eater. The creature hesitated, its form rippling. It tried to absorb the paradox, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, its core began to flicker. Error messages cascaded through its code, invalid _input, processing _overflow, fatal _exception. The Code Eater shuddered, its void-like body convulsing. It let out a soundless scream that vibrated through the code itself, and then it began to unravel, dissolving into a shower of static and fragmented data. Malker's triumph turned to rage. No. That's impossible. But Leo didn't wait. Exhaustion weighed on him, but he rallied the remaining guardians, a handful of pumpkin and corn constructs, their light dim but steady. Now, he roared, and they charged, taking advantage of the distraction. The battle turned. With the Code Eater gone, Malker's forces lost their edge. The villagers, seeing Leo's stand, found new courage. Braun led a charge that broke the rogue line, and Ilara hacked into their comms, spreading confusion. Malker snarled, but as his soldiers fell, he knew the tide had shifted. With a final, hateful glare at Leo, he activated a retreat protocol, vanishing into a data stream with his remaining forces. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors. The Guardians flickered out, their energy spent. The sky began to stabilize, the colors bleeding back to normal. But the node stress was now at 97%, higher than ever. Leo sank to his knees, his glitch sight fading. He'd won the battle, but the war was far from over. And as he looked at the weary faces of the villagers, he knew they'd need more than seeds to survive what came next. The air in Oakhaven tasted of ozone and burnt code. Leo stood at the edge of his farm, the reality node humming beneath his feet like a trapped star. The battle had left scars, not just on the land, where patches of grass flickered between green and Arab blue, but in the villagers' eyes. They huddled near their homes, clutching the spent glitch seeds that had saved them, their faces pale with exhaustion and awe. Elara approached, her admin disguise farmhand clothes smudged with dirt and something that shimmered like fragmented pixels. "The node stress is at 97%, she said, her voice low. "Another direct attack, and it might cascade. Malker will be back, he's not the type to retreat for long." Leo nodded, his glitch sight already active. The world around him dissolved into lines of shimmering code, the farmhouse a cluster of structure_stable tags, the trees looping, growth_cycle routines, and beneath it all, the reality node, a pulsing nexus of physics_core variables tangled with error_strings he'd cultivated. To normal eyes, it was just a slight rise in the earth, crowned with wildflowers that occasionally grew upside down. To Leo, it was a server hub, raw and exposed. "We can't defend against another code eater," Leo murmured, more to himself than to her. "Malker will have patched that exploit. He'll come with something worse." He knelt, pressing a hand to the soil. The code vibrated through his fingertips, a chaotic symphony of overwritten variables. Deleting time cooldowns for his time-warp tomatoes, splicing data strings for hybrid crops, it had all stressed the node's integrity. Now, it was a beacon of instability. "What are you thinking?" Elara asked, her eyes narrowing. She'd been sent to sabotage him, but weeks of watching him bend reality without malice had worn her loyalty thin. The admin's orders felt distant compared to the warmth of Oakhaven's hearths. "I'm thinking we stop playing defense," Leo said, standing. "The node controls local physics. If I hack into its core, I can launch a counterattack, crash the admin's oversight in this region. Disable Malker's forces before they even form up." Elara's breath caught. "That's insane. The node isn't meant for direct manipulation. The system admins monitor those accesses. You trigger a full-scale alert." "They're already alerted," Leo pointed out, gesturing to the glitched sky where clouds stuttered in their drift. "Malker's attack proved that. This might buy us time. A temporary blackout in their surveillance." He turned to the villagers, who had gathered at a respectful distance. Old Man Harlow, who'd once scoffed at Leo's unnatural pumpkins, now held a glitch seed like a talisman. "I need everyone to stay back," Leo called out. "This could get messy." Kale, the former enforcer who'd defected after Leo out-hacked his rollback attempt, stepped forward. His merchant disguise was gone, replaced by simple work clothes, but his posture still screamed admin training. "I'll monitor the perimeter," he said gruffly. "If Malker returns mid-hack, we'll need warning." Leo nodded his thanks. There was no time for debate. The node stress ticked up to 98% in his vision, a red, warning, flag flashing. He closed his eyes, diving deeper into glitch sight. The world fell away. He was floating in a sea of code, the reality node's core a brilliant, tangled knot before him. It pulsed with reality_anchor protocols, interspersed with the glitch_injections he'd introduced. To hack it, he'd need to exploit its own stability checks, a paradox attack, like overloading the code eater, but on a systemic scale. He reached out with his will, fingers of thought brushing against the code. First, he isolated the oversight_module, the subroutine that allowed the system admins to monitor this region. It was a complex weave of surveillance_tags and report_loops. Normally, tampering would trigger an instant security_breach alert. But Leo had spent weeks studying its patterns from Elara's offhand comments and his own observations. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, though no sound carried in the code space. He crafted a command string, not to delete or modify, but to amplify. Using a buffer overflow exploit he perfected in his hacking days, he fed the oversight_module, a recursive loop, a request to validate its own validation protocols, over and over. In the physical world, the ground trembled. The wildflowers on the node's mound glowed with a fierce, white light. Elara gasped, stumbling back. "The air's getting thin, like the system's forgetting to render oxygen," she shouted. Leo ignored her, focusing. The loop escalated, consuming the module's processing power. In his mind's eye, he saw the oversight_module begin to stutter, its code lines fragmenting. He pushed harder, injecting a corrupted variable from one of his error apples, a stat_boost tag that didn't belong. The module tried to parse it, failed, and triggered an error cascade. A deafening chime echoed across Oakhaven, not through the air but through reality itself. The sky flickered, blue, then black, then a static gray. Villagers cried out, clutching their heads as their system interfaces, usually invisible, flashed, connection_lost, errors. It's working. Kale yelled from the edge of the farm. I'm getting no pings from the admin network. The surveillance is down. But Leo wasn't done. With the oversight disabled, he turned his attention to Malker's forces. Through the node, he could sense them, a cluster of admin_agent, signatures regrouping a mile east, their code tinged with Malker's aggressive, patch_attempts. Leo smirked. Time for the counterattack. He accessed the physics_core, targeting the variables governing local gravity and inertia. With a mental command, he tweaked them, not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to disorient. He set gravity to fluctuate randomly within a small radius around Malker's position. In the distance, a chorus of shouts and crashes erupted. Through glitch sight, Leo saw agents stumbling, their movements jerky as gravity pulled them up, down, and sideways in rapid succession. Their equipment, code_weapons, and shield_modules, glitched out, sparking with error messages. Malker's signature flared with rage, but he was powerless. Without oversight, his admin privileges were limited. Forces disabled, Leo reported, his voice strained. The hack was taking its toll. His head throbbed, and the node stress hit 99%. Warnings blared in his vision, core_integrity_critical. He withdrew, pulling back from the code C. The world snapped back into focus, the farm, the villagers, Elara's worried face. The sky stabilized into its normal blue, but a lingering tremor shook the ground. The reality node's mound now crackled with residual energy, the wildflowers wilted and smoking. Did it work? Old Man Harlow asked, voice trembling. Before Leo could answer, a new sound cut through the silence, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was unlike anything Oakhaven had heard, a system-wide broadcast, raw and unfiltered. A holographic display flickered into existence above the node, visible to all. It showed a map of the world, with a single, blazing red dot marking Oakhaven's exact location. Text scrolled beside it in stark, admin-sanctioned font, anomaly_source_identified. Reality_node_breach. Coordinates_locked. Leo's blood ran cold. He'd expected an alert, but this was a declaration. The pulse repeated, and he knew, every admin faction, every rogue group, every power-hungry entity with access to the system's backbone, had just received those coordinates. His farm was no longer a hidden glitch, it was a target on a global scale. Elara stared at the hologram, her face ashen. You didn't just crash local oversight, you sent a feedback surge through the node's core. It broadcast your location like a distress beacon, but inverted, a "here I am" to every admin in existence. Kale approached, his expression grim. I'm detecting multiple pings now, not just Malker's faction. Dozens of them, from all directions. Some are moving fast. Leo sank to his knees, the adrenaline draining away. The hack had succeeded, Malker's forces were scattered, the immediate threat neutralized. But the cost? He looked at the villagers, their hope turning to fear. He'd wanted a cozy retirement, a quiet life of farming and minor exploits. Instead, he'd turned his home into ground zero for a reality war. What do we do? A young woman asked, her voice small. Leo pushed himself up, forcing steadiness into his limbs. His glitch sight showed the node stress holding at 99%, teetering on collapse, but stable for now. The code around them was in turmoil, but it was his turmoil. He'd made this mess, he'd have to manage it. We prepare, he said, his voice gaining strength. Elara, Kale, I need you to help me fortify the node. We can't hide anymore, but we can make this place a fortress. Use every glitch, every exploit we've developed. He turned to the villagers. I'm sorry. I brought this on you. But if we stand together, we can turn this into an opportunity. This farm is a reality node, a piece of the system's heart. Whoever controls it, controls a slice of reality. I'd rather it be us than some rogue admin. A murmur ran through the crowd. Old Man Harlow stepped forward, placing a gnarled hand on Leo's shoulder. You saved my granddaughter with that cozy cabbage. You defended our homes with those glitch seeds. We're with you, glitches and all. Leo felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't asked for this loyalty, but it humbled him. He nodded, then focused on the node. The hologram above it still pulsed, a constant reminder of the eyes now upon them. In the distance, the first signs of new arrivals shimmered on the horizon, not Malker's forces, but others, drawn by the signal. His retirement was well and truly over. But as he surveyed his farm, the glitched crops, the loyal faces, the crackling node, he realized something. He wasn't just a hacker in exile anymore. He was the guardian of a reality glitch, and he'd use every line of code at his disposal to protect it. The next battle wouldn't be against one faction, but many. And Leo was ready to reprogram the rules of engagement. The morning after the battle was unnervingly quiet. Leo stood at the edge of his farm, the reality node humming softly beneath his feet like a sleeping giant. The air still carried the metallic tang of ozone from last night's hack, the desperate surge of code that had crashed local admin oversight and scattered Malker's rogue forces. Gravity had stabilized, but the grass where the invaders had stood was now a patchwork of glitched colors, shifting between emerald green and pixelated static. He could see it all with his glitch sight, the lingering error strings, the fractured data packets, and the node's core pulsing with restrained power. Elara approached, her usual clumsy gait replaced by a weary determination. Dirt smudged her cheek, and her farmhand's dress was torn at the sleeve. "The villagers are securing the perimeter," she reported, her voice low. But the feedback surged. "Leo, every admin faction in the system now knows we're here. Oakhaven is lit up like a beacon in their surveillance logs." Leo nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. The reality node's revelation had been a double-edged sword, saving them from Malker, but painting a target on their backs. In the distance, the first rays of dawn glinted off something unnatural, a shimmer in the air, like heat haze but threaded with lines of system code. "They're already coming," he murmured. "Not just rogues. The main admins too. We can't fight them all." Kale emerged from the farmhouse, his stern expression softened by exhaustion. The former enforcer had shed his merchant disguise, revealing the sleek, gray uniform of an admin operative beneath. "I've intercepted their communications," he said, holding up a data crystal that glowed with faint blue light. "The Central Command is debating whether to quarantine Oakhaven or obliterate it. But there's a faction, led by Administrator Lyra, who sees value in your glitches. She's proposing a truce." Leo raised an eyebrow. "A truce? After they tried to retire me, then sabotage me with patches like you two?" He gestured vaguely at Elara and Kale, who exchanged a glance. Elara had been sent to fix his exploits, Kale to enforce a rollback. Both had failed, and in the process, seen something in Leo's methods, a creativity the rigid system lacked. "We defected because you showed us another way," Elara said, stepping closer. Her hands trembled slightly, a remnant of her clumsy programming, but her eyes were steady. "The system is brittle, Leo. It's full of holes, and the admins are too busy patching symptoms to see the root cause. Your glitched crops, they're not just anomalies. They're possibilities." Kale nodded. "Lyra believes that. She wants to study your work, not destroy it. But you'll have to negotiate. And quickly, her envoys will be here within the hour." Leo sighed, running a hand through his hair. The weight of the past week settled on him, the thrill of exploiting code, the chaos of dragons and nobles, the battle with Malker. All he'd wanted was a cozy retirement, a simple farm. But the node had changed everything. He could feel its code intertwining with his glitch sight, offering glimpses of deeper layers, the very fabric of reality, waiting to be rewritten. "Fine," he said at last. "Let's broker a truce. But on my terms." He spent the next hour preparing, not with weapons, but with crops. In the center of his field, he planted a row of error apples, their skins shimmering with corrupted data strings. Nearby, time-warped tomatoes ripened in seconds, their vines twisting in impossible loops. He even retrieved a few neutron star pumpkins from storage, their dense, metallic forms sinking slightly into the soil. This was his leverage, the glitches that had drawn attention, cured plagues, and crashed interfaces. The villagers watched from a distance, their faces a mix of awe and fear. Old Man Harris, who'd once scoffed at Leo's methods, now tended to a patch of cozy cabbages, their decay timers deleted to eternal freshness. When the admin envoys arrived, they came not with armies, but with subtlety. A portal of light opened at the farm's edge, and 3 figures stepped through. Administrator Lyra led them, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that glowed with faint code streams. She wore a simple white robe, but Leo's glitch sight revealed the layers of encryption and firewalls woven into its fabric. Behind her were two attendants, their forms flickering with admin-level permissions. Leo, Lyra said, her voice calm and measured. The world's greatest reality hacker. I must admit, your file undersold your ingenuity. Leo crossed his arms, standing amidst his glitched crops. Retired hacker, according to you. Or did you forget you exiled me here? A faint smile touched Lyra's lips. A miscalculation. We revoked your combat classes, but your core ability, glitch sight, is tied to your soul's code. Irremovable without termination. We hoped the quiet life would temper you. Instead, you've turned this backwater into a nexus of chaos. She gestured to the reality node, its presence a subtle vibration in the air. And you've uncovered a node. Do you know what that means? It means I'm sitting on a server hub that controls local physics, Leo replied, his tone dry. And every rogue admin wants a piece of it. Like Malker. Lyra's expression darkened. Malker represents a faction that believes in absolute control, using nodes to rewrite reality to their whims. They're a threat to the system's stability. Your hack yesterday, while reckless, disabled his forces temporarily. It also showed us something valuable. Your glitches can interact with node code in ways our protocols cannot. She paused, her eyes scanning the error apples. We propose a truce. In exchange for peace and our protection for Oakhaven, you will supply us with samples of your glitched crops for research. We want to understand these anomalies, not eradicate them. Leo considered this. The offer was tempting, safety for the village, an end to constant sabotage. But he'd learned not to trust the admins blindly. What about the other factions? Malker's still out there, and now every admin knows my location. Your protection might not be enough. We will station observers here, Lyra said, nodding to Alara and Kale. They've already integrated into your operation. They can serve as liaisons and early warnings. Additionally, we'll encrypt Oakhaven's coordinates in the system, making it harder for rogues to pinpoint. But you must cease mass exploits that trigger global alerts. No more crashing interfaces or warping time on a village scale. Alara stepped forward, her voice earnest. Leo, this is a chance. We can work with them, show that glitches aren't just bugs, they're features waiting to be harnessed. Imagine what we could learn. Kale added, and you'll have backup. I may have been sent to shut you down, but I've seen your farm thrive. It's unorthodox, but it works. Leo looked around, at the villagers peering from their homes, at the glitched crops glowing softly in the morning light, at the node humming beneath him. This farm was his home now, flawed and chaotic, but his. A truce meant compromise, but also survival. All right, he said slowly. I agree. But my terms, first, Oakhaven remains autonomous. No admin interference in daily life. Second, I control the node's access, you can study it, but not commandeer it. Third, Alara and Kale stay as my farmhands, not your spies. They've earned their place here. Lyra studied him, her code-enhanced eyes analyzing every variable. After a long moment, she nodded. Agreed. We will draft a formal accord. But know this, Leo, the rogue factions still lurk. Malker will return, and others will come. Your retirement is over, you're now a player in a much larger game. As she spoke, a system notification flickered in Leo's vision, not as an alert, but as a gentle prompt, truce protocol initiated. Terms, peace in exchange for glitched crop samples. Oakhaven under protected status. He dismissed it, feeling a strange mix of relief and tension. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the future loomed uncertain. After Lyra and her attendants departed through the light portal, Leo turned to Alara and Kale. Well, looks like you're stuck with me, he said, a wry smile touching his lips. Alara grinned, her clumsiness returning as she stumbled over a root. Wouldn't have it any other way. Now, about those time-warp tomatoes, I've been thinking, if we tweak the growth variables further, maybe we could create a crop that harvests based on emotional states. Imagine joy berries that ripen when someone laughs. Kale rolled his eyes, but there was a hint of amusement in his stern face. Let's focus on fortifying the node first. I'll set up surveillance glitches around the perimeter. And Leo, thank you. For not giving up on this place. As they set to work, Leo felt a shift, not in the code, but in himself. The cozy retirement he dreamed of was gone, replaced by something more complex, a farm that was both sanctuary and battleground, a truce that was both shield and shackle. He knelt by the error apples, using his glitch sight to adjust their data strings, ensuring they'd produce stable, research-worthy samples. The node's pulse echoed in his bones, a reminder of the power at his fingertips. That evening, as the sun set over Oakhaven, casting long shadows across the glitched fields, Leo sat on his farmhouse porch. The villagers had resumed their routines, their fear tempered by newfound hope. Old Man Harris brought him a mug of tea, grown from a cozy cabbage leaf that never cooled. "You've done good, son," the old man said, his voice gruff. "This place, it's alive again." Leo sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through him. In the distance, he could see Alara and Kale bickering over a patch of soil, their former roles as admin patches forgotten in the rhythm of farm work. But his glitch sight never rested, it scanned the horizon, the code, the subtle tremors of the system. Rogue factions still lurked, Malker was regrouping, and the truce was fragile. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. The farm was secure for now, a neutral zone born of glitches and negotiation. But in the back of his mind, a plan was forming, how to use this truce, these crops, this node, not just for peace, but to reprogram reality itself. The admins thought they were studying anomalies, Leo knew he was planting the seeds of change. And as the first stars glimmered above, twinkling with their own celestial code, he whispered to the night, "Let them come. I'm just getting started." The chapter closed with the farm settling into an uneasy calm, the reality nodes hum a constant companion, and Leo's resolve hardening like the neutron star pumpkins in his field, dense, unyielding, and full of potential. The morning sun filtered through the oak leaves surrounding Leo's farmhouse, casting dappled shadows across the newly repaired vegetable stalls. For the first time in weeks, there was no imminent threat of admin attacks or rogue factions storming the gates. The truce with Administrator Lyra held firm, and Oakhaven breathed a collective sigh of relief. Leo stood on the porch, steaming mug of coffee in hand, watching the farm come to life. His glitch sight flickered at the edges of his vision, a subtle overlay of shimmering code that only he could see. The reality node beneath his farm pulsed with steady, rhythmic data streams, no longer screaming with the chaotic energy of battle. He'd spent the past week implementing basic stability protocols, patching the worst of the fractures Malker's attack had caused. "Morning, boss." Alara emerged from the farmhouse, her silver hair tied back in a practical braid. She carried a basket of tools that glimmered with residual system energy, leftovers from her days as an admin patch. "The self-watering fields are holding steady. No code degradation in the irrigation variables." Leo nodded, taking a sip of coffee. "Good. Let's check the time warp tomatoes before the harvest cycle completes." Last time, they nearly triggered a localized temporal loop. Together, they walked through the rows of crops that defied every agricultural law in this world. To Leo's glitch sight, each plant was a complex web of data strings, growth rates, nutrient values, decay timers, all of which he could manipulate with a thought. The pumpkins with neutron star density sat heavily in their plots, their code reinforced to prevent them from sinking through reality itself. The cozy cabbages emitted a soft, warm glow, their decay variables permanently deleted. "You've created something remarkable here," Alara said softly, brushing her fingers against a vine of error apples. The fruits shimmered with unstable stat boost code, carefully contained within Leo's custom encryption layers. "When Lyra sent me to sabotage you, I never imagined this." Leo chuckled. "Neither did I. I was supposed to be retired." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Kale, the former enforcer turned farmhand. His stern demeanor had softened slightly since defecting, though he still moved with the precision of someone trained for combat. "The perimeter scans are clear," he reported. "No anomalous code signatures within 5 miles. The rogue factions appear to be lying low." "For now," Leo murmured. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the system's oversight protocols shimmered like a faint digital aurora. The truce meant protection, but it also meant observation. Lyra's admins watched every glitch he produced, studying his methods even as they pretended to grant him autonomy. As they reached the time warp tomato patch, Leo activated his glitch sight fully. The plants appeared as cascading waterfalls of accelerated growth variables, their harvest timers counting down in negative values. He focused, manipulating the code with practiced ease. "There's a buffer overflow in the temporal acceleration subroutine," he pointed out, highlighting a section of glowing text only he could see. "If we don't correct it, the tomatoes will ripen so fast they'll achieve quantum superposition." Alara leaned in, her own limited admin sight allowing her to perceive the edges of the problem. "I can help stabilize the variables." My protocols were designed to fix glitches, after all. Just don't fix them too much, Leo teased. Their unpredictability is what makes them valuable. Together, they worked, Leo deleting problematic code strings, Ilara reinforcing the structure with system-approved patches. It was an odd partnership, the reality hacker and the former saboteur, finding harmony in the chaos they once opposed. Kale watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. By midday, the farm buzzed with activity. Villagers from Oakhaven arrived to trade for glitched produce, their carts filled with goods Leo had requested in exchange, rare seeds, enchanted tools, and fragments of corrupted code he could study. The market stall, once a humble wooden counter, had expanded into a proper shop with Ilara managing transactions while Kale kept watch for any signs of trouble. Leo took a break beneath the shade of an ancient oak, its roots intertwined with the reality node's data streams. He closed his eyes, letting his consciousness drift into the code. This was his meditation, scanning the underlying structure of reality for weaknesses, anomalies, or threats. The node hummed with power, a nexus of possibilities that he was only beginning to understand. A soft voice broke his concentration. Master Leo. He opened his eyes to find 3 new figures standing before him. They were breathtakingly beautiful, with ethereal features and eyes that glimmered with system energy. Goddess-like farmhands, sent by various factions as gifts or observers. The first, Serafina, had hair like spun gold and wore simple farming clothes that somehow looked regal. The second, Lyra's personal envoy named Arya, moved with graceful efficiency. The third, a mysterious woman called Nyx who claimed to be from a neutral pantheon, watched him with curious intensity. "We've finished planting the new glitch seed batch," Serafina reported, her voice melodic. "But the growth variables are unstable. They keep trying to sprout into guardian forms even without threat triggers." Leo sighed, standing up. "Let me see." He followed them to a newly tilled plot where the glitch seeds, his invention for temporary defensive guardians, lay buried. To his glitch site, they pulsed with aggressive code, their programming corrupted by residual battle data from Malker's attack. "The threat response subroutines are stuck in a loop," he diagnosed. "They think they're still under siege." Nyx stepped forward, her dark eyes studying the code with an intelligence that surprised Leo. "May I?" she asked, extending a hand. When he nodded, she whispered something in a language that sounded like compiled binary, and the seed's code calmed, their aggressive loops dissolving into peaceful growth patterns. Leo raised an eyebrow. "You have glitch sight?" "Not exactly," Nyx replied with a cryptic smile. "My people interface with reality differently. We're what you might call natural bugs in the system." "Interesting." Leo filed that information away for later study. The growing harem, as the villagers had started calling them, was becoming a collection of powerful beings drawn to his ability to manipulate the world's code. Serafina represented a faction of nature deities curious about his glitched crops. Arya was Lyra's eyes and ears. And Nyx, well, her origins remained unclear, but her help had been invaluable. "Thank you," Leo said sincerely. "All of you. This farm wouldn't function without your help." Arya bowed slightly. "Administrator Lyra sends her regards. She's pleased with the latest cozy cabbage samples. Their anti-decay properties are revolutionizing preservation magic." "Good," Leo replied, though a part of him remained wary. Every sample he sent was a piece of his knowledge handed to the admins. The truce was a delicate balance, cooperation without surrender. As afternoon faded into evening, Leo gathered his unusual team for what had become a daily ritual, the sunset scan. They stood in a circle around the farm's central plot, where the reality node's energy was strongest. Leo activated his glitch site to its fullest extent, the world dissolving into streams of luminous code. "Report," he said, his voice taking on the detached tone of a programmer debugging a complex system. Ilara spoke first. "Perimeter defenses at 98% stability. The invincible light walls are holding, though their energy consumption is higher than projected." Kale added, "No external threats detected. However, internal anomalies are increasing. The error apples are developing sentient code fragments. One tried to optimize its own stat boost algorithms this morning." Serafina's report was more poetic. "The land sings with your glitches, Master Leo. But the song has dissonant chords. The pumpkin's density variables are affecting local gravity in subtle ways." Nyx simply pointed to a section of code only she and Leo could fully see. "There's a fracture here. Not from battle damage. It's growing." Leo focused on the area she indicated. Deep in the node's core data, a hairline crack was spreading through the foundational code. It wasn't Malker's work, this was different. Older. As if the system itself was straining under the weight of his glitched innovations. What is it? Arya asked, sensing his concern. I'm not sure, Leo admitted. But it's not an attack. It's more like structural fatigue. The reality node wasn't designed to handle this level of manipulated code. A sobering realization settled over the group. Leo's peaceful retirement, his cozy innovations, they were stressing the very fabric of reality around his farm. The self-watering fields, the accelerated growth cycles, the impossible hybrid crops, each glitch added strain to the system's architecture. We need to implement stabilization measures, Leo decided. Not just patches, but foundational reinforcements. If this node collapses. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew, Oakhaven, the farm, everything they'd built would be erased in a cascade of corrupted data. That night, Leo worked alone in his farmhouse, which had become part workshop, part server room. Scrolls of code floated around him, projected by the node's energy. He was designing something new, not a glitch to exploit, but a framework to contain his glitches. A sustainable system that would allow his innovations to exist without breaking reality. Elara found him there hours later, surrounded by holographic schematics. You should rest, she said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. The farm will still be here tomorrow. I know, Leo replied, not looking up from his work. But this fracture, it changes everything. I thought I was just bending the rules. But what if I'm breaking the game entirely? Then we'll help you build a better one, Elara said with surprising conviction. You've given us all something we never had before, choice. The admins control the system, but you show us it can be changed. Leo finally met her gaze, seeing not just a former enemy or a loyal farmhand, but an ally who understood the weight of what he was doing. Thank you, Elara. As she left him to his work, Leo returned to his schematics. The solution was taking shape, a recursive stabilization algorithm that would use the glitch's own energy to reinforce the node. It was risky, like using fire to fight fire, but it might work. Outside, the farm slept under a sky streaked with the aurora of system oversight. The goddess-like farmhands rested in their quarters, each dreaming of whatever beings like them dreamed. Kale stood watch at the perimeter, his stern face softened by moonlight. And Leo, the retired reality hacker, worked through the night, not for power or glory, but to protect the cozy retirement he'd built from the chaos of his own making. His glitch sight scanned the code continuously, vigilant for signs of the next threat, knowing that in this glitched harmony he'd created, peace was always just one fracture away from disaster. The morning sun filtered through the leaves of the time-warped tomatoes, casting dappled shadows across the self-watering fields of Leo's farm. Months had passed since the truce with the system admins, and what was once a simple backwater plot had transformed into something extraordinary. The farm in Oakhaven had become a neutral zone, a place where dragons perched beside merchants, where rogue adventurers traded stories with system enforcers, all drawn by the impossible produce that grew from reality's broken seams. Leo stood at the edge of his main field, his hands resting on the wooden fence he'd reinforced with glitched code. The air hummed with the gentle energy of the reality node beneath the soil, a constant reminder of both his power and his responsibility. Beside him, Elara was carefully harvesting a batch of cozy cabbages, her movements precise despite her former role as a saboteur. Her blonde hair was tied back with a simple ribbon, and she wore the practical work clothes of a farmhand, though her eyes still held the sharp intelligence of an admin operative. Another perfect harvest, she said, placing a cabbage into a woven basket. The decay timers are holding steady. No anomalies in the last week. Leo nodded, his glitch sight activating almost instinctively. Lines of shimmering code overlay the world around him, the green strands of growth variables, the blue pulses of water data, the golden threads of sunlight algorithms. He focused on the cabbage in Elara's hand, scanning for any instability. The code was clean, contained within the stabilization framework he'd spent months designing after Nyx had pointed out the fractures in the node's foundation. It had been exhausting work, nights spent hunched over his farmhouse table, scribbling equations on parchment while the goddess-like farmhands brought him tea and worried glances. Good, Leo replied, his voice calm. The framework is holding. But keep monitoring the node's stress levels. I don't want a repeat of last month's gravity fluctuation. He remembered the incident well, a brief moment where pumpkins had floated into the sky before crashing back down, caused by a minor overload in the node's physics controls. It had taken 3 days to recalibrate, with Kale grumbling about unnecessary risks while helping to secure the fields. Now, Kale was across the farm, directing a group of villagers as they loaded glitched berries onto a dragon's back. The stern enforcer had softened slightly since defecting, though he still wore his merchant disguise with a rigid posture that betrayed his training. "Leo. The tomatoes are ready," called Serafina from the greenhouse. Her voice was like wind chimes, melodic and bright. She emerged with a basket of time-warped tomatoes, their skins shimmering with temporal energy. As one of the goddess farmhands who'd come to admire Leo's power, she moved with an ethereal grace that made the villagers stare in awe. But to Leo, she was just another hard worker, albeit one who could sense code fluctuations with preternatural intuition. Leo walked over, his boots crunching on the gravel path. The farm was bustling with activity. In one corner, Arya was teaching a group of children how to plant glitch seeds, her gentle patience belying the defensive guardians that would sprout if needed. In another, Nyx was scanning the perimeter with her dark, observant eyes, ever vigilant for threats from rogue admin factions. The Harem, as some villagers jokingly called them, had become an integral part of the farm's operations, each bringing unique skills that complemented Leo's reality hacking. "How's the temporal stability?" Leo asked, taking a tomato from Serafina's basket. He held it up, his glitch sight revealing the intricate web of time cooldown variables he deleted to accelerate its growth. The code was stable, contained within the framework's boundaries. "Perfect," Serafina said, smiling. "No time loops or skips. But I sensed something odd earlier. A faint pulse from the node, like a heartbeat growing irregular." Leo's expression tightened. He'd been monitoring the node closely since the battle with Malker, aware that his glitches were a constant strain on reality's infrastructure. The stabilization framework was supposed to distribute the load, but it was a delicate balance, like building a dam while the river kept rising. "I'll check it after the market," he said, tucking the tomato into his pocket. "We have visitors today." And visitors there were. By mid-morning, the farm's entrance was crowded with beings from across the world. A dragon with scales like polished obsidian lounged near the berry patches, its massive head nodding in approval as Kale presented it with a crate of bug-exploited berries. A noble from a distant kingdom haggled with Alara over the price of an error apple, his eyes wide with greed at the thought of temporary stat boosts. Adventurers clad in mismatched armor marveled at the glitch seeds, while system enforcers in plain clothes kept a watchful eye, their presence a condition of the truce. Leo moved through the crowd, greeting regulars and newcomers alike. He wore simple farmer's clothes, a linen shirt and trousers, stained with soil, but his bearing carried the confidence of someone who'd once crashed a global system. To most, he was just the eccentric farmer who grew miraculous crops. To a few, he was the reality hacker who'd outsmarted the admins. And to himself, he was a man trying to enjoy a retirement that kept getting interrupted. "Leo, a moment." Kale approached, his merchant's cloak fluttering in the breeze. His face was stern, but there was a hint of urgency in his eyes. "We've received reports from the Eastern Territories. Reality glitches are spreading, spontaneous time freezes, objects duplicating without cause. The admins are struggling to contain it." Leo frowned. "Is it related to our operations here?" "Unclear," Kale said. "But the pattern suggests a systemic failure. The stabilization you've implemented here might be localizing the damage, but elsewhere." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely. "The system is under stress globally." Before Leo could respond, Nyx appeared at his side, her dark hair blending with the shadows even in daylight. "Leo, there's a message for you." It arrived through the node's communication channel, encrypted, high priority. She handed him a small, crystalline tablet that glowed with soft blue light. Leo took it, his fingers brushing against its smooth surface. The tablet was a piece of admin technology, part of the truce agreement that allowed secure communication. He activated it with a touch, and lines of code scrolled across its surface, resolving into text. He read the message silently, his heart rate quickening. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made the bustling market around him seem distant. Asterisk, the system is fracturing. We need your help, asterisk. There was no signature, no identifier, just those 7 words, pulsing with an urgency that felt personal. Leo's glitch sight flared, and he saw the message's code structure. It wasn't from the main admin faction he'd brokered the truce with. The encryption was different, older, with traces of foundational protocols he hadn't seen since his days as a hacker. It was from a hidden source, one that knew about the node, about his abilities, about the fragility of reality itself. "What is it?" Elara asked, stepping closer. She'd finished her sails and was watching him with concern. Leo didn't answer immediately. He looked out over his farm, the thriving fields, the diverse crowd, the goddess farmhands working in harmony. This was what he'd built, a cozy retirement, a neutral zone, a place where glitches could exist without breaking the world. But the message hinted at something larger. If the system was fracturing globally, his local solutions might not be enough. The stabilization framework was a bandage on a wound that was spreading. He thought back to the overflow exploit that had crashed the tutorial, the act that had led to his exile. He'd been arrogant then, pushing boundaries without considering the consequences. Now, he understood the delicate balance of reality's code. But understanding didn't change the fact that he was perhaps the only one who could fix it, or break it beyond repair. Leo. Seraphina's voice was soft beside him. You've gone pale. He took a deep breath, the scent of ripe tomatoes and damp earth filling his lungs. The farm was his home, his sanctuary. But the message was a call to action, a reminder that his retirement had always been an illusion. The admins had tried to bury him here, but they'd left him with the tools to reshape the world. It's a request, Leo said finally, his voice low. From someone who knows what's happening. The system isn't just stressed, it's fracturing. And they think I can help. Kale's eyes narrowed. A trap. Rogue factions have been quiet since the truce, but they haven't disappeared. Maybe, Leo said. But the code in this message, it's not malicious. It's desperate. He closed his eyes, letting his glitch sight expand beyond the farm. He could feel the reality node beneath his feet, its energy thrumming through the soil. He could sense the stabilization framework holding everything in place, a delicate lattice of code that contained his glitches. And beyond that, in the distant streams of data that connected this world, he felt tremors, tiny cracks spreading through reality's foundation. The farm was safe for now, but for how long? If the system collapsed, his neutral zone would vanish along with everything else. His cozy retirement would mean nothing in a broken world. Elara placed a hand on his arm. What will you do? Leo opened his eyes and looked at her, then at Kale, Seraphina, Nyx, and the others. They were his team, his unlikely family. They'd fought beside him, trusted him, helped him build this place. He couldn't abandon them. But he couldn't ignore the call either. He smiled, a slow, determined curve of his lips. It wasn't the smile of a retired farmer content with his lot. It was the smile of the world's greatest reality hacker, seeing a problem that needed to be solved, no, reprogrammed. My retirement is over, he said, his voice gaining strength. We've been playing defense, containing glitches, keeping the peace. But if the system is fracturing, we need to go on the offensive. We need to reprogram reality on a grand scale. He held up the crystalline tablet, the message still glowing. This isn't just a request for help. It's an opportunity. Whoever sent this knows things the admins don't. They've reached out to me because they understand what I can do. And I'm ready. He turned to face the farm, his glitch sight painting the world in layers of code. The pumpkins with neutron star density, the apples with broken stat boosts, the tomatoes that warp time, they weren't just crops. They were proofs of concept, tools he'd refined over months. They were the key to stabilizing a fracturing world, or perhaps reshaping it into something new. Gather everyone, Leo said to Kale. We need to plan. The farm stays protected, that's non-negotiable. But I'm going to answer this message. And when I do, I'm not going as a retired hacker. I'm going as the farmer who grows reality's bugs. As the others moved to follow his orders, Leo walked to the center of the farm, where the reality node's energy was strongest. He knelt, placing his hands on the soil. The code here was vibrant, chaotic, beautiful. He could feel the fractures Nyx had warned about, tiny stress lines in the foundational data. But he could also feel the potential. With the node as his anchor, and his glitched crops as his tools, he could do more than patch the system. He could rewrite it. The hidden source had reached out to him for a reason. They needed his help because he was the only one who saw the world not as a fixed reality, but as lines of code waiting to be edited. And after months of cozy innovation, of building a peaceful life, Leo realized he'd been waiting for this moment. The challenge wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. He stood, dusting off his trousers. The market continued around him, unaware of the decision that had just been made. Dragons traded hordes for berries, adventurers marveled at miracles, and the sun shone on a farm that defied logic. But Leo's mind was already racing ahead, designing protocols, anticipating obstacles, envisioning a world where glitches weren't errors to be fixed, but features to be harnessed. His retirement was over. But in its place, something greater was beginning, a journey to reprogram reality itself, with his farm as the starting point, and his glitched crops as the key to saving a fracturing world. And for the first time in months, Leo felt not the weight of responsibility, but the thrill of possibility. He was back in the game, and this time, he was playing for keeps.